Let's do this thing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to ATP Insights. We cover the most important tech news in Asia. Today happens to be Monday, the 3rd of August, 2026. Let's get right to it. I want to talk about Moonshot. Has a 20,000 Nvidia chip cluster, which is bigger than you think, and I'll go through some of those details in a bit. We always have a great list of guests. Initially, we'll be joined by Alex Svanevik, CEO and co-founder at Nansen. We're going to talk about how on-chain intelligence can improve investment decisions. Following that, we will welcome Alisher Abdulkhaev, co-founder and CEO at Kanaria Tech. This should be super interesting to discuss how socially aware robotic intelligence will just help businesses become more efficient and have autonomous fleets. Next, we will talk to Kurt Liu, CEO at XRSPACE, to cover how AI-powered avatars will help businesses create more personal, scalable, and effective customer interactions. And then Sonam Pankaj, CEO at StarlightSearch, we'll talk about how self-improving AI agents will help businesses turn operational experience into better decisions. And later in the program, we will be joined by Ethan Lee, founder at Smalt AI, to talk about how reliable AI work platforms will help operating capacity of knowledge-based business systems. Also, Ben Stiles, the Chief Commercial Officer at SuperAPI, will talk to us about how embedded superannuation infrastructure will reduce compliance risk and improve employee onboarding for Australian businesses. And finally, Bhagwat Pant, consultant at CXGLOBE, will join us to talk about how practical AI adoption and locally informed market expansion can improve the growth and operating performances of business entering new markets. And before we get to all of that, let's hear from our first presenting sponsor, Twilio. Twilio is the secure and scalable platform to build amazing customer engagement without the complexity. With the AI-driven workflows, you need to connect. They are trusted by over 300,000 businesses. It is the platform that makes more possible. Visit Twilio.com to start building today. Okay, let's get to some very, very interesting news. Okay. Moonshot AI, we've spoken about this company before, reportedly in the context of a ban of high-quality chips from Nvidia to China, somehow has a cluster of roughly 20,000 Nvidia Hopper generation chips through a computing agreement with Alibaba. There's always a backdoor somewhere. The infrastructure has become an important part of the company's ability to train and operate its Kimi models, including Kimi 3, which we've seen in a whole bunch of surveys, surpasses, or in most cases, comes super close to the frontier lab models of OpenAI and Anthropic. Now, Alibaba has denied supplying Moonshot with H200 chips specifically, but it has not disputed the broader computing relationship. There is a relationship apparently between Moonshot AI and Alibaba. And to be fair, Alibaba is like the grandfather, right, of all sort of Chinese internet companies. Okay, there's WeChat as well, but the two of them together actually make up sort of the grandparents, if you don't mind me saying, the OGs of the Chinese internet infrastructure. In the fact that a new up-and-coming company like Moonshot AI, with a very sort of famous and very smart and very well-educated founder, the fact that they have a relationship with Alibaba, I mean, I wouldn't dispute it. I don't know for sure. It wouldn't surprise me. But let's talk about these Hopper generation chips. While it is the previous generation from the current Blackwell, these Hopper generation chips, the H chips, H100, H200, are still very powerful. Let's run through some of this stuff. I did a little bit of research on this. Assuming a cluster broadly comparable to 20,000 H100 SXM GPUs, its theoretical resources would be roughly 1.6 petabytes of combined GPU memory, 67 petabytes per second of aggregate memory bandwidth, and close to 40 exaflops, of dense FP8 AI computation, or nearly 80 exaflops using NVIDIA's advertised sparse performance measurement. Let's just say that while these figures are theoretical, just based on what that cluster would look like, and while a real training job achieves much less because thousands of processors must continually exchange information, this is one of the things we talked about, right? One GPU is great, two GPUs are better, 20,000 clusters. There's a lot of communication going on between these clusters. And the network design and the way they're actually interacting with each other is going to have a big effect on performance. But still, a cluster of 20,000 H-class or Hopper-class chips constitute a frontier-scale AI computer, not just like an ordinary cluster of chips that some company would be using to train their artificial intelligence model. And frankly, it's enough infrastructure to train very large MOE or mixture of experts models and run extensive experiments and serve substantial inference demand at the same time. Now, just a little bit more background on this because we've been through this before, but for new viewers and new listeners, one more time. Kimi is a huge model, 2.8 trillion parameter mixture of experts models. It activates 104 billion parameters during operation and supports a context window. This is important, right? For doing sort of long context stuff of 1 million tokens. Right now, and Moonshot actually on July 27th, if we remember the date correctly, has released the model weights, giving developers outside the company the ability to deploy, adapt, and iterate around the system. This is really important. The fact that it's running on these Nvidia chips is also super important. Now, the reporting here does not establish that all 20,000 chips were obtained illegally, or that the arrangement directly violates some of this US ban. But how do we know? But the point really is not whether it violates the ban or it doesn't violate the ban. The question is, do they actually have access to these chips? Do they have access to any of these chips? And as we've intimated for sure on ATP Insights and also on AGTP Insights, there's always a way to get this stuff, whether it's in arms dealing, drug dealing, or chip dealing, and they all seem to fall into the same kind of category for me. It is possible. Now, we know that the government in the United States changed its policy in January 2026 to consider H200 exports to China individually subject to licensing and security conditions. And we also know that Alibaba was later reported to be among a group of Chinese companies approved by the US government to purchase the H200 chips, which is the most powerful in the Hopper generation of chips, which, as I said, is the previous generation. Although the Chinese government themselves did not immediately authorize the fact that these chips could be imported. So there's this back and forth going on, right, between the US government and the Chinese government. But the more important point to me is that export controls, or even import controls, to be fair, operate a very complicated infrastructure market. And I just think it's important to continue to reiterate this. AI companies do not always own the processors that they use. They can rent them for sure, right? So one company can own them, deploy them, put them into a data center and just go, here, just pay me to rent this kind of stuff. They can obtain computing capacity, as I've just mentioned, from investors, from cloud providers, or data centers outside their home country. I mean, there's a way, although I'm not suggesting this is happening, that a company like Kimi K3, that Moonshot, could potentially contract with a company in the United States or in France or in Thailand to get access to AI-enabled data centers there that don't have any ban on any kind of chips. Who's going to stop that from happening? And this is what I mean when I say that the infrastructure that runs all of this stuff globally, whether it's on the data center side or the chip import-export side or any of the other components that go into building these data centers, right, that it's hard to imagine or it's hard to control what's happening in the digital universe. That's just hard. And we know that the US regulators have acknowledged that the risk that American chips could still support Chinese AI models through this type of sort of diverted access to it. Again, you don't always need to go in a straight line to get the stuff you want. Sometimes you can go like a roundabout to be able to get to some of this stuff. And we know this for sure. Moonshot's progress also shows that restrictions have raised the cost and difficulty of Chinese AI development without stopping it. So here's the thing. Let's say you're not, it's hard to use the word legally, but let's say you're fundamentally not supposed to have access. If you're a Chinese company and there's an export ban, or frankly, even if there's an import ban, let's just say that you want to have access to the most high-powered chips, or even the previous generation's high-powered chips, the H series, the Hopper series of chips. There are plenty of ways you can get it. And I would submit to you as well that the Chinese government definitely wants the foundational models inside of China, even the open weight models, to be just as good, if not better, than the models in the United States. Can we agree on that? That the Chinese government does not want the models in China, the AI models in China, to be worse performing, whether it's on inference, on training, or any part of the stack there, to be worse than they are in the United States. There is a bit of a conflict or a little bit of a war going on between the Chinese companies in the artificial intelligence space and Anthropic and OpenAI and Grok, right, and SpaceX and Meta Spark and Google Gemini. All of these companies, not a lot of them are competing with Apple. Apple has other problems, which maybe we'll talk about tonight on AGTP. But that's a story for a different time. But the point is that the Chinese don't want these models to be worse. So maybe they're just saying they're import controls. Do you understand what I mean? this idea that like maybe there's a roundabout way, because we know that the Chinese are aggregating soft power around the world. We know this for a fact through investments that they're making across the board, whether it's in bridges, in high-speed trains, or in data centers, or in information across the region. So who's to say that what's happening in a country like Thailand or in Vietnam or in Japan or anywhere else in the region, or even in India, that stuff cannot be rented by some of these Chinese companies? Or frankly, that the Chinese government would announce import restrictions and still kind of wink their eye at the companies and go, don't worry about it. We'll figure out a way to somehow to get these chips in the country, to get them to approved vendors like Alibaba, let's say, or even to reach any of these companies, right? They can have access to them that don't seem like they're that big a threat to the United States' AI industry. And then that company, with the sort of tacit approval of the Chinese government, goes, hey, Moonshot, we'll rent you some of this stuff if you want. Right. And we also know that even if there are some restrictions in the generation of chips that these Chinese companies are getting, we know this for sure, that the Chinese laboratories have responded by improving model efficiency. We know that for a fact. We've seen recent announcements where they're saying things like, we have a much smaller models with way fewer parameters that can compete up to 85 or 90% with some of these foundational labs in the United States. And that's really important. Okay, they can use much more sparse architectures to do this, and they've also released all their open weights as well that can spread without requiring the original developer to operate every deployment. And that's also important too, because it means that from a cloud rental perspective, from a cost perspective, if they're not running the models themselves, and look, Martin and I talk about this a lot on AGTP Insights as well, there are not that many companies that can run these very, very large models on their own because they simply don't have the compute to do it. Now, they can rent that compute if they have a lot of money from AWS. They can rent it maybe from Facebook. They can definitely rent it from SpaceX, who has their own issues with their capacity. But the point is that there's always a way for these Chinese companies to get access to compute in a way that may not actually... It's not precisely illegal, but there's always a way. Like we say this in the United States all the time, where there's a will, there's a way. And if they want to be able to get access to compute, to be able to run the training or the follow-on inference on these models, there is a way for them to get access to these things. And I think this story around Moonshot actually proves this. Now, what does this tell us at scale? You know, I always like to kind of give the general information first and then dig as deeply as I possibly can into some of the topics. And let's address some of this stuff like a little bit more deeply. What does this tell us? This story about Moonshot. And I think this company actually itself is actually super interesting. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. The guy who runs this company was educated at Carnegie Mellon in the United States. That's where he wrote his PhD. That's where he was educated for the most part about how these artificial intelligence systems work. And yet he couldn't run his company there. Just imagine a situation where Moonshot and Kimi K3 was another competitor in the US. Okay, just think about that for a second. Anyway, but what does it tell us how compute and how AI infrastructure is getting obtained? Let's just go through this in more detail. So access to computing power has become increasingly separate from ownership of the underlying chips. We intimated this earlier actually in this conversation. And Moonshot appears to be consuming capacity supplied by Alibaba rather than purchasing and operating the entire cluster itself, which again means that they can kind of hide the fact that they're doing this if they want to. It takes a really intrepid reporting team of people to try to understand the digital flow of where they're actually doing their training. But it's also interesting to me that another thing that it says about where they're getting their compute power and also where they're getting access to this infrastructure is that unlike in the United States, there seems to be, not just in China, but in the rest of Asia, in the individual countries in Asia, less of a competition around the model creators and the infrastructure creators and more of a partnership. You can see a way where Alibaba has access to this stuff, where they're using it themselves. And if they have any excess capacity, I'm not saying they're not charging for it, but I will say that they could be being very liberal about the way that they're giving access to this chip because they want their own national security to be protected and to be dominated by these Chinese open weight companies. And Moonshot is just like the best example of this, right? This allows capital, technical capacity, and commercial relationships to reinforce one another inside the same ecosystem. And I think, look, we talk a lot for somebody who's been in Asia for 3 decades and who's been following what's happening in the Chinese economy, but also in the Chinese government forever. This is something that we've seen. Let me give you an anecdote. I remember my first time in China, and this will surprise you. So if you're not ready for the surprise, I suggest you sit down. It was 1991. It was a long time ago. What is that? 35 years ago. And I remember going with a guy. We were there there were 4 of us on the trip, but one of them had actually studied in Shanghai and inside of China, deeper inside of China, university there to study and learn how to speak Mandarin. His Mandarin was amazing. Jim Baker, you know who you are. A guy from Texas. Another guy named Jim Baker from Texas. It doesn't matter to me. Really good. But one of the things we talked about as the 4 of us, we were young. We were 25, 26 years old at the time, right? One of the things we talked about as we were driving through China was like there were electricity poles everywhere. And you'll see where this makes sense in a moment. Why did we care? Because we literally took a train through the middle of nowhere and we just kept seeing electricity everywhere. While we, as young Americans, were complaining about the style of government in China because we didn't know any better. And one of the things that Jim said to us that still resonates with me today is, how hard, how difficult, how technically difficult do you think it is to electrify an entire country of 1-point-something billion people and get everybody on the same page and get everybody to understand in big cities and in tiny, tiny villages that electricity matters to the country and that by hook or by crook, we're going to get electricity everywhere. And it kind of dawned on me as we were like riding this train through I wouldn't even call it the countryside. It could have been through the desert in China, having this realization that this government wanted to make sure that its country was pulled or dragged forward. And electricity was the first step. Electrifying the countryside is the thing that Jim Baker called it, if I remember correctly. And they're doing the same thing today with artificial intelligence. They're getting everybody together in a room metaphorically and saying, we need to be able to dominate in the AI space. We need to be able to do this, and to do that, we all have to be rowing in the same direction. If we're sitting in the same boat, we're sitting in the same river, we all need to be rowing in the same direction. Now, when you think about that in the context of cloud, right? So if Alibaba is running a cloud business and Moonshot, Kimi K3 needs to do its training, and again, it's a metaphor for the rest of these companies, but they're saying that they have access to a cluster of 20,000 of these H-class or Hopper generation chips from Nvidia, which should be surprising to most people that aren't paying attention, but frankly should not be that surprising to people that are. But these type of cloud agreements can give smaller AI labs, or with smaller resources. I wouldn't call Moonshot small per se, but access to infrastructure that could otherwise require billions of dollars in hardware investment in data center development. And I'm not saying that going forward at some point that Moonshot can't do this on their own. But what I am suggesting to you is that there seems to me to be a hugely collaborative environment happening here, where the Chinese government is very, very consumed with making sure that a company like Moonshot has access to all the resources that it needs. And again, it's a metaphor for the rest of the companies that are in this space in China. My guess is that if Moonshot has access to a cluster of 20,000, and I gave you the details of like what that power actually means, of 20,000 of those chips, then I would presume that the rest of the companies that are in China has some access to those chips as well, if that makes sense, for everybody too. So that's just the cloud stuff. But it makes enforcement harder on the ban because regulators have to understand who ultimately uses the chips, and that can actually be hard, right? Where those processors are actually located and what workloads are actually being run on them. Who's going to like log in and be able to see what's happening on any specific chip run or any specific training run? It's going to be hard to do that. Now, the strategic unit is therefore no longer simply the individual chip. It's the complete compute service that's running it and that's surrounding it, including access rights and the identity, of the final user. Now, let's talk about one more thing before we get to our guest and our next sponsor. How much have U.S. exports control actually constrained Chinese AI development? I mean, I would suggest very little, to be fair. And in some ways, development of anything in a constrained environment can actually make you better at that development. Like on day one, you'll just sit there and go, okay, now what do I do? Since I've had some or most of my resources taken away from me, and I had the luxury of using the best possible resources, let's just say a day ago, and today I have to start from scratch and do something new. But necessity is the mother of invention. I did not make that up. That's a real thing that real people say. And the controls in this case have made advanced Nvidia hardware way more expensive and difficult for Chinese companies to obtain. But in the same vein, they've also increased uncertainty around long-term access to replacement chips and future architectures. So these restrictions have not prevented well-funded Chinese companies from assembling large clusters, as we've suggested, right? That Alibaba has done. And existing inventories and license sales and infrastructure outside of mainland China continue to provide alternative sources of capacity as well. But enforcement also faces a timing problem in my mind. What does that mean? Well, if I already have acquired the chips before these restrictions came in, I can be pretty productive for a while, right? Like particularly if you have access to some of the Blackwell chips, which we haven't talked about, but that is the current generation of NVIDIA chips. And when software improvements can increase the amount of useful work extracted from each processor, that can actually be hugely, hugely beneficial as well. And research on a Chinese model development indicates that labs are compensating through more efficient architecture and greater use of open development ecosystems. Research on this evidence therefore suggests that controls are creating friction and slowing access rather than completely denying China the ability to develop competitive models. Okay, just a little bit more. And then we'll get to our guests. Boom. Okay. What does this relationship say about Kimi K3's relationship between model efficiency and access to advanced hardware? Like what let's just dig a little bit deeper into this. This is something I do enjoy talking about, right? Because I do believe that Moonshot presents Kimi K3 as like a story about efficiency, how to do more with less. Its mixture of experts architecture containing 2.8 trillion parameters, it only activates 104 billion for each token, reducing the computing requirement during each operation. That's kind of amazing, right? And that efficiency does not remove the need for substantial infrastructure. Developing a model of this size still requires huge amounts of training clusters, right, from the chips. And this is what we talked about with these 20,000 sort of Hopper-style chips. It also requires high-speed networking and reliable access to advanced processors. That's important. Large chip clusters like the one we talked about here and efficient architectures, they go together. I mean, they definitely complement each other. They also supplement each other, to be fair. But it also forces companies like Moonshot and the Kimi K3 implementation to make the hardware more productive. And yeah. And to make the advanced hardware allows labs to test and scale more ambitious designs. Moonshot's reported dependence on NVIDIA equipment indicates that American processors remain highly valuable even in China, and even as Chinese companies improve their software and training methods, the result is it's slightly smaller, to be fair. But US technology remains central, but Chinese model developers are extracting more capability from every unit of compute they can contain. And finally, what would a more effective export control system need to address? If we actually wanted to do this, if somebody actually really wanted to restrict the types of hardware that people literally outside the United States could or could not buy, what would we have to do? Well, I think regulators would need greater visibility into the final users. You'd have to know like where these large computing clusters were, not just the companies that were purchasing them. Particularly Alibaba is a company that has a big cloud infrastructure. Almost by definition, they're going to start offering some of these chips to other people. They can't use it all themselves. And even if they could, as I mentioned earlier, they are going to go back and potentially rent this and let people do it. 1 second. Okay. The other thing is that cloud providers and data center operators would need stronger obligations to identify customers and using advanced chips for large-scale AI training. I would say that that's a little bit of a pipe dream, to be fair. Now, why do I say that? Well, because how are you going to get people in a foreign company, in a foreign country, where you've banned a bunch of the equipment that you don't want to sell to them, but that the companies want to, but that a company like Nvidia, which remember, we said before this ban took place in January, I can't remember the exact date of it, right? But before it went into effect, 20% of their revenue was coming from China. Nobody wants this. Excuse me. Nobody wants this, right? So if you want cloud providers and data center operators to be obliged to give you more information, you're literally like walking into a room in the dark and then walking into a darker room, I think. Because the likelihood that in a country, whether it's China or any other country, frankly, that has import bans and has been export banned by the United States, that they're somehow going to say, okay, we'll give you some of these previous generation chips, whether it's the H100s or the H200s from Nvidia, we'll allow you to sell them there. Excuse me. And then you have to, at some level, negotiate with the government to make sure that the government's actually in China is going to actually let those chips in, and that the government in China creates a list of companies that are appropriate for the importing of those chips and the deployment of those chips. And then the government that says, we don't want you to have any of this stuff, but if you do get it, you now have to give us the right to log in and monitor that. Dare to dream is what I say, because I don't think that's ever going to happen. I just don't think that that's a possibility. I cannot imagine a scenario or a situation in which the Chinese companies, the cloud providers, whether it's Alibaba or others, say, sure, you somehow denied our entire country, except for like 10 to 12 companies here, to have access to this technology. And now after you've given us access from halfway around the world or from literally from the other side of the planet, now you're going to want to be able to see what we're doing. I just don't think that's going to happen. I just don't see them giving out the identity to be able to, the identity of the people that are actually using this. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Give me 1 second. Let's just keep going. So some of these rules would need to cover overseas subs and infrastructure arrangements when the effective beneficiary is a restricted Chinese entity. Again, I just don't think that's going to happen either. Enforcement, would also require coordination with governments in countries where advanced chips and data centers are located. There is the possibility. I mean, imagine a situation where Alibaba Cloud builds a data center, excuse me, again, in Thailand or in Vietnam or in India. And there are no restrictions in those countries for buying even the most recent generation, the Blackwell chips. You can buy them in Thailand. I'm pretty sure you can buy them in Vietnam, and I'm pretty sure you can also buy them in India. But there's nothing stopping Alibaba from whatever their sub is in another country, whatever their subsidiary is in another country, from buying those chips. I can't imagine that they wouldn't do that either, and then give access to those data centers for the companies, the Chinese companies inside, like whether that is Moonshot through Kimi K3 or any of the other companies that want to rent that capacity. There is a way around this, I think, if you want to have that possible. In this case, like just these enforcement rules these alone cannot fully govern hardware that has already entered international supply chains. Right. So like when a supplier, right, or even a middleman buys an Nvidia, the most modern, generation of Nvidia chips, Blackwell, who's going to stop them from selling them anywhere? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's part of this as well. He's only going to get, yeah, okay. You should, but he's only going to get 10 minutes. We have to do the Boomy read first, yeah? Okay, let's do that right now. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to our second sponsor. Let's hear from Boomy. Boomi is the data activation company for artificial intelligence. It powers the agentic enterprise by bringing data to life across your business. Trusted by over 30,000 customers and supported by a network of over 800 plus partners, Boomi helps organizations of all sizes achieve agility, efficiency, and innovation at scale. Let's welcome our first guest, Martin, Alex Svanevik. Alex, how are you? I am super duper, man. Where are you based? Awesome. Okay, so really close by. Look, it's great to see you. I can see outside. Huh. I like it. You're sitting by a window. I have a view of Singapore all the way from Bangkok. It's great to have you here.
Yeah.
Let's have a quick conversation about how on-chain intelligence will improve investment decisions, risk management, and capital allocations for crypto businesses. Tell us a little bit about Nansen first, and then we'll dive into this in a little bit of detail, yeah?
Yeah. So a lot of people use Nansen for on-chain analytics because you can see what the smart money is doing in real time. This is kind of a unique thing about blockchains, that you can see every single transaction, but you don't necessarily know who is making the transaction. Right. And we've made it a lot easier for people to see who's behind each address. And over the years, we've basically shifted our... I'm getting audio from
that's okay.
someone else.
Just ignore it. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
Martin, we can hear you, man. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah. So, so basically, we made it a lot easier for people to figure out what's happening on chain. And recently, we also have expanded into allowing people to trade. Which means they can do everything in one place. So you can basically discover what's happening in markets. You can research it with our agent, and you can actually execute on it as well inside the same product.
Alex, can you just run through for us, and for the viewers and for listeners, how you can take this anonymous information and determine who's actually trading it, right? And once those wallets become visible, like once they become known, like what becomes visible once they're treated as economic actors rather than just like different addresses? Do you know what I mean? Where people can say like, I know what this wallet's doing.
Yeah, so there's a few things. The first one is that you can know which entity it is. So you can say, hey, this is the specific fund or an influencer.
How do you know that though?
That's kind of what you can attribute back to the address. That's number one. But number two, you can also see their track record in the past. And so if you're trying to monitor someone who's trading or investing, you'd probably want to know what's their P&L, right? Yeah. Are they actually successful in their trading? Or is this someone who consistently is making bad decisions and losing money? So we kind of do both of those things. We first allow you to see what the identity is of each individual address that we have tracking for, and we also calculate their track record. We even give you kind of descriptive labels to indicate, hey, this is someone who's really good at trading perps. This is someone who tends to be early on meme coins, or whatever it is. So we basically do both the identity and the behavioral tracking as well.
What do you do if someone's trading across multiple wallets? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then you can't, so, like, let's just say like I'm buying, like I have assets in two different wallets, and I buy in one place and I sell in another place. Do you know what I mean? So like I can hide my trading. Once I know that Nansen exists and people are following me, I don't want to get arbed out of my own position, right?
Yeah. So that is one thing that does take place. Typically, if people do that, they go through a centralized exchange. And so you can see funds flowing into, say, Binance or Coinbase or Kraken or something like that. And you have to, it's actually a really important point. You need to apply some degree of nuance to interpret what you see on a blockchain, right? If you send to Binance, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're selling. We actually also allow you to aggregate multiple different addresses on the same entity. So let's say that you're tracking, 3 Arrows Capital, no longer active, but once were, or some kind of other fund, or even an exchange. You can see an aggregate across all the different addresses that we track. So we kind of allow for that. But this is also kind of a fundamental limitation, or something that people should understand when they do track on-chain flows, that you can deposit into another entity like a centralized exchange,
right?
And you have to apply a bit of nuance to your tracking.
Can I ask you this? Like, how? I haven't looked at. I don't trade crypto. I mean, I look at it a lot, but I don't trade it myself. But I've always been a believer that like market liquidity is almost as important, if not more important, than market direction, right? Like understanding where Bitcoin or where some meme coin is going to go directionally is important, but also understanding liquidity and where I can get liquidity is almost more important, right? Because
yes,
if liquidity is dominated, I'm going to make up a number, yeah, but if liquidity is dominated by like the top 7% or 6 or 7% of the people that are trading, if I'm following them, I can never trade at the right size. And their trades are going to move the market in a way that mine are never going to have the ability to do. How do I know? Like, do you track volume as well in specific coins and specific crypto?
Yeah.
And how do I know?
Yeah, so
how do I know where there's enough liquidity for me as a trader to access that liquidity to make enough money so I don't move the market too?
So there's a few different things here. One is that we track who are the top holders of a specific token. So if you have, there's like a meme coin, Nansen or Pengu, or you're looking at, perps, could be an AI stock that you have perps on. You can see on our platform who are the top holders. So that gives you an idea of how much can each of these wallets potentially impact the price, right? And you can also monitor their history. So have they ever traded before, or are these tokens just dormant? They're just sitting in the wallet. That's a very different scenario, right? And then the other part is, you mentioned liquidity, and you can see which exchanges have the most liquidity by just seeing how many tokens are sitting in their wallets, whether it's a centralized exchange like Binance or a decentralized one like Uniswap.
Yeah, but just the fact that they're sitting in a wallet doesn't mean that it's actually traded. So this is the other question I want to know is like, how do we know that the top holders are also the top traders, that they're active, or that they're just not hold? Do you know what I mean?
You would just look at their history, and so you can see that in the platform. So if you look at the address, there's been no movement, only inbound tokens. They never go out. That's it's a strong indication that probably nothing's going to happen tomorrow with those tokens.
Yep.
If you can see it's actively traded, it's a different story, right? So if you're looking at a market maker like Wintermute or Cumberland, QCP, you can see a lot of activity, and you would interpret that differently than if you're looking at some dormant token sitting in a team wallet or a multi-sig or something like that. And by the way, a lot of the stuff we're talking about now are kind of like crypto concepts, right? But the interesting thing that's been happening in the last year or two is that increasingly people are trading other types of assets on chain. It's not just crypto anymore, right? People are trading tokenized stocks, they're trading perps.
But the volume, when you say perps, you're talking about perpetual futures, perpetual options. Yeah?
Correct. Yes. That's right. So, for example, on Hyperliquid, which is the most popular decentralized perps platform and blockchain, people actually, even in our product, if you look at the top 15 perps that people are trading through our product, 10 of them are non-crypto. So they are, S&P 500 an index for S&P 500, gold, silver, SpaceX, MicroStrategy, which is obviously adjacent to crypto, but these are assets that are actually non-crypto. So to me, the thing that's kind of exciting right now, even if there's a lot of pessimism in the crypto sector, is that it seems like blockchains are actually going to win these other asset categories as well. And
by win, what do you mean? In other words, if I compared the amount of stock trading on chain in, let's just say, SpaceX to the amount of stock trading off chain, where's more of the volume trading today?
Oh, obviously today it's not on chain.
Right.
But the point is that when you look at the market share of the types of assets that are being traded, tokenized stocks, for example, are booming on blockchains. And so it's always...
Sorry, it's a really good point, but I just want to make sure. Is that because a new class or a new type of investor is coming in and saying, okay, now these things are fractionalized. Now I can trade in much smaller volume, or now I can have access to stocks that I couldn't have access to before because I couldn't get a brokerage account at like some institutional investment thing. Or
I think that's what it is. Yeah, but go ahead. I'll hear you.
But I want to be clear about what it is, right? Because the whole idea about trading stuff on chain is that it should democratize it and give access to people that don't have access.
Right.
Or is it just the same accounts, like whether it's a BlackRock or something?
No,
it's not that. Doing the trading on chain.
It's not that. I think it's overwhelmingly the former. And I think the analogy I would make here is to stablecoins. right?
Right.
For many of us, like access to a US dollar or even US dollar yield products is not an issue. But for a lot of people around the world, they never had that access. And so they start using Tether on Tron, right? And various DeFi products that give you yield and so on and so forth. I think it's a huge unlock to allow people around the world to be able to trade, for example, US stocks, but it could be stocks from any country or any market, right? Just make it available in a self-custodial wallet so that you can trade it. That's where I think it's coming from, that people, for various reasons, didn't have access to these brokerage accounts. And so many people are now talking about kind of brokered the unbrokered, right? It used to be banked the unbanked,
Yeah, it used to be the unbanked,
which is kind of what stablecoins help do. They sort of bank the unbanked. But I think the next thing is you don't only want to hold US dollars. You want to hold potentially stocks that appreciate over time to save and to protect your wealth. So that's kind of the next frontier in some ways. And I think that's what we're seeing now, that more and more people find it actually a lot more interesting, frankly, to invest in tokenized stocks than to put money into some kind of meme coin or speculative kind of crypto that has maybe some connection to some protocol, but it's kind of loose, right? So people really want access to, I think, quality assets, and that's what we're getting now. And it's cool to see that it's happening on blockchains.
Awesome. Okay, Alex, I'm going to thank you for your time. Next time, let's try to spend a little bit more time with you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to say bye for now. Martin, let's do HCL. HCL Tech is supercharging progress with AI that moves beyond ambition and delivers real business impact. A recognized AI leader trusted by global enterprises to turn technology into transformation. HCL Tech is supercharging progress. Martin, let's bring in Alisher Abdulkhaev to talk about Kanaria Tech. Hey, man. How are you? I'm great. You can hear me okay, yeah? Super duper. And where are you right now? Where are you based? Oh, you're in Tokyo. How good is your Japanese? Little. Well, your English is great. Okay, we wanted to have you on because we wanted to talk about, and Japan's a great place to do this, by the way, how socially aware robotic intelligence will help businesses deploy safer, more efficient, autonomous fleets. Tell us a little bit about Kanaria Tech, please. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes, that's
Awesome.
correct. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
We are building the robot brain for navigation, for social navigation in Kanaria Tech. And yeah, I want to explain the details in the upcoming conversations.
Yeah, so what is social navigation?
Like robots are navigating, and they have to avoid the obstacles, right, when they are navigating. And this is correct when the environment is static, right? If everything is static. But imagine if there's like a lot of people moving around, then robot still has to do the job, right? So this is what we call social navigation.
Got it.
So while navigating, it should be aware of social cues.
Got it. Can I ask you this? Do we underestimate as humans just how aware we are of our own surroundings without even trying to be aware? Does that make sense? Do you think we underestimate that?
I think we are doing actions without realizing how we are doing it, I would say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it underestimating, but like when we are walking, for example, right, on the street, we actually observe the other people's reactions, gesture, and everything unconsciously. So this is something we don't realize in like daily lives, but this is what we do actually as a human.
So let me give you another example and tell me what you think, where we stand on this for like robotics to be socially aware. Whether I'm walking down the street that's filled with people or it's an empty road or a side street, if I see lightning or hear thunder, but it's not raining yet, I kind of know it's going to rain. But I only know it's going to rain by the distant the distance of the sound that I'm approximating in my head and by how far away that lightning is. When do we get to a point where robots are socially aware enough to understand that level of kind of nuance? Do you know what I mean? Because what's happening around me is important, but what could happen around me is way more important, right? In other words, like I can hear an ambulance in the background when I'm riding my motorbike.
Exactly.
But I know what's coming towards me or driving away from me. When do we get to a point where the ears on a robot are sensitive enough and the brain processing power is sensitive enough out in the real world to be able to get to that, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I really like this ambulance example, and this is what I always try to give when I talk to people.
I was reading your mind there. I'm proud of myself. Go ahead.
Yeah, so like when we walk and we like hear the ambulance sound, then we know that there's something urgent, right? And then we have to, get out of the way, or give the way to for others, right? So this is about understanding the general social rules,
right?
And this is about AI models or robot has to be trained so that they see enough data, enough scenarios, so that it knows what's going to happen next.
Right.
It's very, very cute. So this is possible with the foundational model. Like foundation model means the model, AI model, has to be trained with like massive data so that it can see different scenarios and it can make the reasoning, right? This is what we see with LLMs. By having this, and these models will start to understand the cause and effect of physical things, and then can estimate what's going to happen, and which makes it a socially aware brain, right?
Right, but there are a lot of components here that need to be in place, right? One is that the processing power on the robot itself either has to be powerful enough to be able to do that, or it has to have access to cloud infrastructure and has to have the right throughput so that it can process it, I would say, off device, if you consider a robot a device. Just where do we stand? Guys, I just think that people that are listening and people that are watching right now don't have a full understanding of where we stand sort of in the robotic life cycle of, are we there? Are we close to there in developing this? Or are we like 6 to 7 years away? Where are we in this process of having the right model, but also the right sort of component technology to be able to build a robot that is properly testable at Haneda Airport for moving luggage around, right? That understands like when some dude next to him faints and falls on the conveyor belt.
Right. Yeah, this is like very important trade-off. On one side, this is the capability, like the power, like the model's skill set, right? Capability, right? On the other hand, the computational power. So far, I mean, we have been deploying different computer vision models in edge devices, and they were small enough to be deployed on the robot, on the hardware.
Right.
But when it comes to like social navigation, like more complicated and more difficult task, like social navigation, then the model itself becomes bigger. It has to be bigger because it has to act as socially aware, right?
Right.
And on the other side, we have to deploy on the cloud and then we can scale to different bigger computational powers. But right now, I don't think either of these options works because the models are not small enough to be deployed to edge devices.
Not yet.
We have to sacrifice a lot. On the other hand, if we deploy on the cloud, then the latency will be a big problem, especially in like the very dynamic environment. You have to react very, very quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So there is actually another way, like something in between. So the idea is you give the reasoning part to the cloud side, okay? It's also called system 1 and system 2, or inner loop or outer loop. And system 1 is the system working on the robot, which is executing the reasonings coming from the cloud. And this reasoning doesn't have to be very frequently. It can be slower, but execution should be very, very fast, right? So there's actually such kind of intermediate solution between these two.
Right. When do we get to the point though where, because again, I just think about this luggage situation, right? I get off the plane in Singapore, or I get off the plane in Narita, I go downstairs and I go to get my luggage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can hear people around me talking, and I know when they're getting closer. I know when they're getting further away. I can hear the carts move. Like there's all these stimuli that are taking place around me, and everything that I'm doing, right, is on device, meaning because it's me, it's in my brain. But also,
Right.
I'm also having a conversation with like my business, with my traveler companion. So I'm
Right.
super multitasking here. How far
Right.
away are we in your mind? You're working on this, from having
Yeah, I see.
robots that are not just socially aware, but that are so what's the word I'm looking for?
Efficient.
They're so cognitively deep that they can do all the things that I can do. Like, when is the robot apocalypse coming? How soon? How far away are we from this?
Yeah, as you may guess, it's difficult to answer, like give the
Okay, but
give an approximate timeline. But sorry, but I think there's two aspects. One is the models are still quite big, and there are a lot of research ongoing, which is making these models more efficient. Because there's some redundancies still in the transformer architecture, I would say.
Yeah.
So, and this transformer architecture itself will evolve, and this makes the models number of parameters smaller, less. And another aspect is that hardware will improve, right? So by time we will have more powerful hardwares, which can host bigger models. So I think there's two aspects, and then they will match at some point. And in my opinion, of course, like I don't know, like how deeply it can, process different things, but at least for social navigation, we are not that far away from that point, I would say. Maybe
so when you go out and sell, like, let's say Kanaria Tech is going out to raise money from investors, and an investor asks you, like, I love this idea. I love having robots be socially aware, whether they look humanoid or not, right? You still want them to be like, it could look like a garbage. You don't really care, but you still want them to be socially aware. But when you're selling it to an investor, and the investor goes, okay, Alisher, tell me, like, how far away am I from this? What is my potential return timeline? There's got to be some guesstimate,
of course.
right?
Right. Yeah, for this, we have very clear timeline, which is 2030, like 3.5 years later. As for Kanaria, we are targeting 2030. Yeah.
2030. That's really close, actually.
Yeah,
that's like 3 years away.
I don't think we are that far away. Yeah.
So what kind of? Can I ask you this though? In my imagination, and again, I bring up the Haneda thing just because I thought it was really interesting, and also because you're in Japan. We can talk about what you guys have been doing in Kusatsu as well, if you want to get to that. But before we do that, my guess is that robots, particularly if they're humanoid robots, are going to be doing a lot of interactions with real humans. Let's hope so. How do you design behavior based on all the things that we've been discussing for a humanoid robot, particularly for things that they haven't learned? I'm going to put that in quotes yet, so that other humans can actually understand them and feel comfortable, particularly if they're sharing the same space, if that makes sense.
Right. I think independent of embodiment, it can be humanoid, or it can be mobile robots, or it can be like any embodiment hardware. The most important thing is the brain.
What does that mean? What does that mean when you say embodiment, just for our viewers?
Embodiment is the body type, right? So it can be humanoid, like human body type, or it can be mobile robot, like real robots, which we see on the delivery things, or it can be like dog style robots, right? So 4 legs robots.
Yeah.
So these are about the body, right? But the most important thing, as all of us know, that is the brain. As long as brain knows the social cues, then transferring this knowledge, information to joined actions is something like downstream task, I would say. So yeah, the brain we are building is independent of embodiment, by the way. So it can be applied to humanoid, it can be applied to mobile robot, or any kind of robots.
Okay.
So yeah.
Can I ask you another? It's gonna get really fun now. Are you ready? Where are you from?
I'm from Uzbekistan.
Uzbekistan. Awesome.
Uzbekistan.
Yeah, sorry, I mispronounced it, but I said Uzbekistan. I just mispronounced it.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. You don't have to be sorry for my mispronunciation. But here's the thing. And you live in Tokyo. Yeah? How long have you lived in Tokyo?
10 years now.
10 years. So how similar would you say the Uzbekistani culture is to the Japanese culture?
I think in general, Japanese culture is very unique in the world.
Okay, that's a good enough answer for me. So,
And
this is my question though, because if you're building robots that are socially aware and you
Right.
looking for social cues,
right,
it's going to be different everywhere in the world, right? Because a social cue in Thailand, where I live, is very different than a social cue in Vietnam, which again is different than the one in Singapore, which is very different than the one in Tokyo. Like, I mean, we can go through
Right.
some stuff, but like in Japan, I could literally ask a Japanese person a question and they could say, Kento sasite kudasai. Just let me think about it. And what that really means is no.
Mhm.
Right. But how do you teach a robot all these little nuances? Do you know what I mean? In every country, but also in every region. And to be fair,
Right.
the slang, not the slang, but like the way that people speak in Nagasaki is very different than the way people speak in Aomori.
Right.
How do you
Right.
handle it's very nuanced. Like, and this is true, that's just in one country.
Right. Mhm.
I'm just saying, like,
Mhm.
I feel like this problem of social cueing is just so hard. I don't think we're 3 years away from solving this. What do you think? In your experience from the tests that you've been doing, what do you think?
Mhm. Yeah, like when we try to cover everything about social cues, then yeah, it's definitely very, very much a complicated task, right? But we are focusing on the navigation, right? So we want the robots to navigate while respecting the social things, people's movements and stuff, and also communicating with them. So for language, I don't think it's a problem. Because we already see that LLMs are doing that. But for navigation, it's not. It doesn't have to understand like your emotion or something, right? It has to understand what you will do next.
Exactly. But watch this. Okay. In the United States, if I go like this, yeah, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm waving hello. I'm waving hello.
Yeah.
But if I do this in Japan, I'm asking you to come towards me.
Right. Come towards me. Yeah. Right.
I'm just saying, like, those things are, that's not about talking. It's not about anything. That's a social cue. And that's about navigation. I'm just saying, like, these problems are so hard to solve. How do you match that again on top with the technology that needs to advance really fast to get to the point where all this stuff works?
Right. Yeah, I think there are two things I want to discuss about this. The first one is the data which we are training the model with, right? So this data it shouldn't be like from very specific region or very specific country or culture.
Right.
It has to be from different like internet scale data, right? In short. Of course, we cannot cover all the cultures or everything, but let's take America and Japan, right? So at least we have to have data from America, like the navigation from US, like people walking in the US, and also people walking in Japan, for example. So this, with enough data, the models are capable of capturing the cultures. But when we are deploying, there's two important things. The first one is it has to be prompted about which country it is operating in. This first one. The second one is, regardless of country, we want to have like standard navigation rules for robots, right? For example, like during the training our model, I have seen some people's walking, right? Because we use it for training.
Sure.
And there was like a lot of people walking in the red light in New York.
For sure.
So this is bad data for model for robots. So we don't want our robot to learn this, right? So yeah, we want our robot to learn from Japanese culture more than US culture, to be honest. So yeah, in the deployment side, in the actual operation, we want the robots to have certain rules, like standard navigation rules.
Right.
But in order to understand other people, they can be prompted which country they are operating in, as long as it has this information in its brain. And this information can be trained by having the data from different countries and cultures.
Got it. You want to talk to me about what you've learned in Kusatsu, what you're doing there, and what that means?
Yeah, Kusatsu is one city in Shiga Prefecture in Japan. So we made a robot, hardware and software and design of the body and everything in-house in Kanaria Tech.
Oh, wow.
and we deployed this in City Hall. Right now, the robot is operating as the guidance robot in City Hall.
What does it do?
And
What
the
kind of
idea,
guidance does it do?
so when people are coming into the City Hall, the first, like it has multiple jobs, right? The first one is entertaining the kids so that like parents can do the stuff. So it has like quiz and questions and games and stuff. And since the robot itself is very cute, everyone is loving it. And this is first one. Second one is when people ask where's certain counter in the City Hall, robot is saying, okay, please follow me, and then robot is showing the correct counter for people.
And
this
how
is what I mean by guidance.
How's that going?
It's going very well. So almost everyone in Kusatsu City knows our robot called Wakko-chan. So like it's already becoming like Kusatsu City like resident.
Really?
Already.
So what have you learned from doing this? Like, what are the things that you thought were going to happen or that you thought you would learn? And then what, at the end of the day, what did you learn from this?
I think one of the things I would say we learned is the design of the robot. Like according to your use case application, design matters quite a lot.
Yeah.
And we made this design very custom for Kusatsu City, and like all the shape is kind of representing the city itself, and like everyone is loving the design. So what I would say we learned is like hardware is important, software is important, brain is important, and also the design of the robot is also important.
Very. Okay. Yeah. Well, you've been a really, really great sport. I really appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I'm very interested, obviously, in robotics and humanoid robots and how they interact and how we're going to get them to a place where they actually feel like they are part of our surroundings in a way that feels natural. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, man.
We are hoping for that. Yeah. Thank you for hosting me. Thank you so much.
It's my complete pleasure. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Martin. Let's bring in Kurt. Kurt, how are you? Michael, but thank you. That's okay. My name is Michael Waitze. Yeah. No, it's my pleasure. Where are you based?
Taipei, Taiwan.
Awesome. Haven't been there in a while. Okay, look, Kurt, we wanted to have you on because we want to talk about how AI-powered avatars can help businesses create more personable, scalable, and effective customer interactions. So talk to us a little bit more about XRSPACE before we get into this in detail, please.
Sure. So XRSPACE was founded 8 years ago with the vision to create the next generation of digital interactions. Because we look at the technology advancement in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Internet experience evolved from text only, for example, email to then WhatsApp, instant messaging, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then to FaceTime. So, user in general public has endless desire to get connected as easy as possible, as quickly as possible. So we were always thinking about what's beyond this 2D text and images and video experience. That's why when we founded XRSPACE, focusing on 3D experience. And there's one core pillar that's always been in our core vision is 3D avatars. Because every user wants to have a representation in this 3D world. You need to make sure that the avatar can really fit their needs, meaning, everyone has like I said, endless desire on how they want to look, how they want to act, how they want to express, especially when you're socializing or doing productivity, learning, whatnot. And so avatar is the core in our technology.
So
sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So if avatars are the core of the technology, if a 3D, we as humans are also three-dimensional. You're three-dimensional, I'm three-dimensional. Right. Well, some people say I'm two-dimensional, but that's just because they're mean. But
no, you're multi-dimensional.
I don't know about that. But the presumption is if we have an avatar, that avatar can be interacting with more than one entity or more than one person at the same time. Is that fair?
Of course, and
Right,
that's
so that I want to be as efficient as possible, so I can talk to Kurt, or I could talk to Bob, or I could talk to Martin, or I could talk to anybody at this. I could have five interactions going on at the same time, and that's why the avatar is so important. But how important is it that the avatar is sort of what I'll call photorealistic or human realistic during my interactions? In other words, I would know for sure if I'm looking at Kurt's avatar and I'm like, I just want to talk to Kurt. Do you know what I mean? Are we at that point now where people are so comfortable talking to a representation of somebody as opposed to that somebody? Or are we a little bit further away from that? And how photorealistic does the avatar have to be to make me feel like I'm actually talking to Kurt and not some representation of Kurt?
You bring out a very, very good question, which I also like to address during this podcast.
Awesome. Do it then.
And you know, to tell the truth, that about 4 years into our startup here, we're shooting for photorealistic. Because remember, there was COVID. People talk about, you know, virtual exhibition, virtual meetings, and we were all shooting for photorealistic.
Yep.
Until then, you know, people were imagining that, yes, I want to talk to Michael, a real Michael.
Yep.
But then we realized, and this is why we redefined avatar, because
go ahead.
Avatar's job is to generate interaction, not to mimic the real you in the physical world. Its job in the digital world is to generate digital interaction. And so we sort of pivoted. And because we also did studies, because if you look around, Avatar is everywhere. And I mean the animated version. You know, if you look at every ad, static posters, running TV ads,
K-pop demon hunters.
it's everywhere. I mean,
it's everywhere.
Especially brands, right?
Yep.
The Ronald McDonald clown, the Michelin guy, right? You get my point?
I do. But when I go into Kentucky Fried Chicken, I don't want to order from Colonel Sanders. I want to order from, you know, Timmy in high school kind of thing.
Right. So that's the next step. It's just a choice. It's a choice that we make, because when I say it's everywhere, that's number one. Number two, if we look at, you know, it's not even Gen Z anymore. We're talking about Gen Alpha, who grew up playing Roblox, playing Minecraft, playing Fortnite.
Go ahead.
Right? Mm-hmm. They are used to avatars. And that's also our choice. Why we're on this podcast, because our main market right now is Japan and APAC, because avatar culture is infused, is blending into this younger generation that's coming up. So if you ask them, we did a survey. If you ask them,
go ahead.
Because for example, we actually, one of our investors is Foxconn. We actually, in one of their annual yearly event, we made their chairman Yang Liu's avatar. But then after discussion with Yang, we both decided to do an animated version, because he said, I want my employees, the media who wants to come and approach my avatar and talk to me, not the serious look, and they're afraid to ask the real questions.
So the research says, or tells you that the sort of comic book representation of the CEO of Foxconn is more approachable than the guy than Jensen Huang, who's wearing like a leather jacket, a t-shirt, and has that cool looking silver hair kind of thing. Like that's more okay.
If you remember, even Jensen Huang's speech, he also had presented a animated character of him, not the photorealistic of him, right? So that's the idea. I wouldn't call it comic style, but it's basically a stylized avatar. That again, we take the approach of, for example, Pixar characters, Toy Story characters, where you know it's not just for young people of all ages. They all want this approachable, likable avatars.
Right.
It's visually appealing. You got to be visually appealing first, but then it's approachable, likable, that you want to go ahead and hug him, not just talk to him, but hug him and high five and do all kinds of stuff.
Right, but where do we believe? Where does XRSPACE believe? Excuse me, that the avatars themselves are going to be used the most? Is it in some kind of customer service environment? Is it in banking? Is it in airlines? You know what I mean? Where is it going to be used? And is it at a point today where it is being used? And where do we see the most efficacy?
Yeah. So I would say customer service, but when I say customer service, it's not just the service part, it's the total customer experience, digital experience.
Yep,
right? Go ahead. So for example, our customers in Japan, Resol, who had a problem, basically they want to have more customers outside of Japan. Resol Group has 20 plus golf courses and 20 plus hotels in Japan already, right? So their domestic market is booming. They have no problem, people come in and book golf course and book the villa and enjoy the vacation there.
Awesome.
But they also want customers from Hong Kong, Taiwan, Thailand, Korea, China, all over the place, even US. To be able to come in and book a trip to Japan and stay at their villa and join a round or two of golf.
Right.
Now, here's the problem. Their customer service after 5 p.m. is ultra expensive. Everybody, it's the same for everybody, not just them, right?
I know.
When you want real people customer service after 5 p.m., it's additional cost. Number two, even more expensive for multilingual, right? And then there's real-time issue. So using our avatar, AI avatar persona, basically it helps fix their problem. Our AI avatar can help them basically do the basic Q&As, guide user to check out the beautiful villa hotel rooms type, different types, or any details about the golf course in any languages, right? In real time. And it's a fraction of cost of customer service. So that's, if you ask me, I would tell you the easiest way, the quickest for you to understand is the customer service. But when I say customer experience, meaning because our AI avatar, when you land, for example, in the Resol's website, usually customer service is static, waiting for you to have questions for the representative. But our avatar is going to be proactively engaging with you. For example, I see Michael coming in and say, "Hey, Michael, how was the iPhone that you bought 2 weeks ago? How's it coming along? How do you like it?" It becomes AI digital assistant, just like you walk into a store.
When do we get to a point where there's avatar fatigue? And I guess the follow-on to that is Gen Alpha doesn't have any money to spend. Right? They're so young right now. But how's it working out? I'm curious.
On Roblox and Minecraft and Fortnite. Now,
their parents give them credit card access to go to Fortnite and to Minecraft, but go ahead. But they're not booking golf stuff,
But when I say it's not for under 16, what I meant is all these young generation that's coming up, right? So yes, during COVID, we've heard about Zoom fatigue, right?
Yeah.
You're staring at the screen 8 hours, 10 hours a day, you get that fatigue. Now, very good question again, Michael, the avatar fatigue. Now, I can tell you we saw that, and that's why we focus on avatar, and we saw there's one problem that people have is the avatar motion and expression are always pre-recorded or preset.
Yeah.
And so you can easily see the avatar motion is being repeated. And worst of all, it's not matching the sentiment of the conversation.
Go ahead.
So that's why we also, with our avatar, a technology called behavior AI, which basically will take the sentiment of the conversation and output in real time the right expression and motion according to the conversation.
Got it.
So, for example, we have a customer which I cannot name right now. It's a large.
Oh, you could. I won't tell anybody. Just say the name. I won't tell.
So it's for their customer service, and their request is after they've seen the demo, they love it. There's one problem. They said our customer service, 80% of them coming in and just yelling at our customer service. So your avatar keep smiling.
Right,
That's
it's
not
annoying.
right.
This was the other thing. Sorry, I was going to ask you about this too. It's annoying.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and you're gonna be even more pissed off.
Yeah,
I'm
way
sorry.
more angry.
If you keep smiling and like nothing's happening, and so you start say, okay, sorry, that was just demo, right? In the beginning, we can just easily turn on, and now the avatar, when the avatar detects the customer is not happy, the empathetic look and performance comes out.
Got it.
And here's also one of the advantage of our solution is totally customizable and scalable, and that's why our customer says, I want empathetic and also a bow motion where to say, sorry, I understand your pain. Sorry for the inconvenience this has caused. We're looking into it. All of a sudden the tempo, the talk, the conversation changes according to the user, and that's what our behavior AI can do. And so I don't think
I want to give you two contexts. I understand the fatigue thing, but I want to dig a little bit deeper if you don't mind.
Sure.
And just to give you a personal experience, and then I want to ask another question.
Sure.
I lived and worked in Japan for over 20 years, and I saw, this is back when people were like doing brokerage over the phone. Okay, no video, and every time this one Japanese salesperson would take a phone call from a customer, and I kid you not, he would stand up and bow like 4 or 5 times. Nobody could see him.
But he
still did it. So I get that. But let me ask you this. Anchoring is like really important for relationships, right? So like if you know what anchoring is, right? Like if I want to borrow $100 from you, I can say, Kurt, dude, I really need to borrow 10 grand. And you're gonna be like, 10 grand's insane. I'm never gonna get, but I'm like, okay, fine. I'll take $100. That's going to help me out. You'd be like, $100, simple. You know what I mean? It's very easy to do.
Right.
But on the other hand, I also want to give context. So when I say to you, let's say I said to you, hey man, where are you from? I want to connect to you. Right. And if you had said to me, oh, I'm from Boston, I could have said something really simple like, the first time I was at Fenway Park was in 1975.
The context.
And now I have you. How do you do that with an avatar? Do you know what I mean? So that like when I come on the phone, the avatar, instead of just like jumping right in, they make a connection with me because they figure out who I am, which is awesome when a customer service and a customer experience goes that way.
That's how it should be, right?
Yeah.
So
how do we do that?
Okay. So you basically are aligned with our vision as well. I can tell you right away, we're not there yet, but not because the technology cannot do that. It's mostly because of the willingness of enterprise who's willing to do deeper integration. Because you ask me, how do I do that? We can actually do it because you do ChatGPT every day or Gemini or Cloud. They pretty much remember you, but that's just conversation history. Right? That's conversation history. It's different from profiling. So we can do profiling, but it also requires deeper integration. If I were to be working with business, meaning membership system, right? Purchase history, user data.
But even more than that, like when I meet a new person, I always ask them, hey man, where are you from?
Well, because user data would probably have
it has restrictions around. This is my point though. But like if I say, like when we first got on this call, right? I said to you, hey Kurt, where are you based? You said Taipei.
Right.
So for me, that's tricky because I've only been to Taipei once, and it was literally just for like a few hours. I flew in, I did some business, I woke up the next day, I had some dumplings, which are delicious. The food in Taipei is unbelievable. And then I got on a plane and I went home. I don't have a way to, do you know what I mean? I don't have a way to do that. But if you were from Boston or from Philly or from Tokyo or from Kyushu, do you know what I mean? Or Fukuoka, I have 1,000 different things I can just ask you about without profiling you per se, but things that I can use. Do you know what I mean? How do you get the avatars to be so insightful and so interactive that it feels natural?
So, like I said, it requires time. It requires a couple of more iterations in order to get that. Now, there's one flexibility again of our solution where we allowed the owner of the avatar to customize and say, you know what, every time if I detect there's repeated customer visitor, then I know the history, then I can say as I said, hey, Michael, how was the iPhone that you bought 2 weeks ago?
Right.
But then there's instruction where we allowed business to define and say, if it's a first-time visitor, you always ask about the visitor.
Yeah, something.
Where are you from? And based on that, the next instruction, next prompt is based on where he's from. Talk about the sports, talk about the food, talk about the scenery.
Okay, interesting.
That's doable, but then again, it requires time.
So can I ask you this too? So one of the things you said earlier, and I'm curious about why they feel this way, and I'm sure there's a privacy aspect to this too, but not based on what we just talked about, right? Because there's no privacy thing there. But like, why are corporations or big clients of yours against this being more deeply embedded into their workflow? And then I'll let you go. I think. It depends. You're so interested. This conversation is so interesting to me. I don't want to let you go, but anyway, go ahead.
That's fine. I think it's just matter of time. That's why we're very lucky to be having a few customers who's willing to do a deeper integration after we explain the benefit outweighs the risk, and that risk sometimes is non-existent. What I mean is, basically, it's because large corporations, enterprise has put in tremendous effort in the last 10, 15 years building that legacy system. And that legacy system was never meant to be used by AI.
No, exactly. I mean, you and I could spend hours talking about that. Don't bring this up. It's so interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
So I think it's just a business decision that they're willing to open up and say, I want to provide the best leading experience that's completely different from existing generation type of customer experience using AI. Then we can do that. But it's gonna take time for some large traditional enterprise to be willing to accept that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Are there certain situations where you feel like having an avatar come in, I'll let you go after this, but we're having an avatar come in just isn't the right thing to do and that it really requires a human? I'm presuming like there are health situations or medical situations and stuff like that, but are there others as well?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, at least for now, I think this also has to do with the accuracy of LLM, the AI hallucination and whatnot. But for those who's in a hurry, for example, I want to, like you said, you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. I just want to.
I don't go there, but you brought up the Ronald McDonald thing, so the next thing that came in my head was Colonel Sanders.
It can be used for marketing. You can be used for sales and marketing, not in customer service. It could be. I'm not saying for everything. For ordering. I'm so hungry, and I just need a bucket of fried chicken to go.
Hurry up. Yeah.
And I already know what I want. And I just want to get it and go. And so that's one instance where we think I don't want to put an avatar in front of your face and try to converse. Having a conversation just to get what you want. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, Kurt, you've been a great sport. I really appreciate your time. Obviously, super interesting subject. This stuff is moving really fast, so it's great to have somebody on who's in the midst of it. Thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having us, Michael.
My pleasure.
Right. Thank you.
Bye for now. Okay, let's bring in Sonam. How are you doing today? I am super duper. And where are you based? You're in Amsterdam. But do you live are you based in Amsterdam? Good for you. The last time I was in Amsterdam, it was 10 degrees outside. I'm presuming it's not 10 degrees now.
I know. It's quite hot today. It will be around 25, 30.
Okay, that's nice. It's 33 degrees. It's 34 degrees actually where I'm. Anyway, it's very nice to have you on the show. We wanted to talk about how self-improving AI agents can help businesses turn operational experience into more reliable executions. Tell us a little bit before we jump into this about StarlightSearch.
Oh, thank you for that question. So we dabble into a lot of products. So I'll start how we started. So we started as an open source project called Embedded Thing, which is an ingestion, inference, and indexing in Rust. So a lot of things has been kind of enabled by Rust, which was not previously was possible, like vector streaming, like parallelizing data ingestion and data processing for like PDFs, videos, images, etc., ingesting different kind of modalities as well, and inferencing it in Rust because it also is independent of PyTorch, so you do not have to maintain it. So so we got 500,000 downloads, contribution from Elastic, Milvus, Quadrant, and has been adopted by Microsoft XAI as well. So we started there, and we realized there's a very very basic problem of retrieval, that it is not learnable. Like everything is static. And
why is that?
Because RAG is not enough. Like your agent is not outcome informed. Your agent has to be outcome informed in order to not fail in tasks. So this is where our thing came into, and we started working on self-improvement. We started digging into like current memory problems, and there are so many. If you go on Reddit, LinkedIn, you'll find out that even though they have memory and good retrieval system, even then their agent fail. And why they're failing, the reason is that agents are not outcome informed or eval informed. Your signals die during retrieval. So we came up with certain things like agent RDX, but now we are on-prem agentic AI solution for domain-specific industries like manufacturing, semiconductors, etc. And we provide everything from model deployment, inference engines, memory systems, etc.
So why are the agents not outcome informed?
Because they're
so yeah. If I'm like, I understand in a way, if I'm doing a chat with like ChatGPT or with Claude or with Gemini, I have a question, I want an answer, or I have a thing, and I want them to do something for me. That makes sense to me, right? That they're not outcome informed. They don't know what I'm going to do with the information that I give them. But if I have slightly longer context, right? If it's like 1 million tokens of long context stuff, don't they have to know like what the outcome is along the way if they're acting in an agentic way? And I love the face you just made. Like, how dumb are you, Michael? Of course not. It's the greatest face I've seen all day. But they don't know what the outcome. Like, that's interesting to me. And I think that would surprise most people. No.
Yes. And does, because most of the time I get questioned, why don't I use Mem0? Why don't I use Letta? How are you different from them? Like, why I don't use DSPy and just keep improving the prompt? I get this question all the time. And the answer is you have retrieval, but you also have trajectories, right? The agent should know what kind of trajectory can lead to the right outcome. And that is what outcome informed means here. That agent should be understanding the trajectory, even though it is conversational or long horizon, right? And with Mem0 and other retrieval system, you hit a boundary, like your agent cannot improve above 85%. But with self-improving, when your agent is outcome informed, it can go beyond that success rate.
So can we suggest, or we don't know for sure, okay, or maybe you do, and I'm just not outcome informed, which is possible. But let's just say that in the recent news cycle, we saw that OpenAI was doing a test on some cybersecurity stuff, and it hacked into Hugging Face. Now, there's more news has come out after that, which is not shocking, actually, that they actually hacked into some other companies, and Anthropic is bragging, hey, look over here, we also hacked into some companies. We're not as dumb as those. You know what I mean? Like, everybody wants to say that they've hacked into some company. I'm not sure what that wins them. But are we suggesting that when the agent is in the process of doing this, that they don't understand the outcome of the stuff that they're doing? And that's one of the reasons, not the reason, but one of the reasons why they could go and just hack into something, because they don't understand the outcome of their own actions before they do it. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes, they do not understand the outcome of what their actions will be exactly. And the thing is, most of the time, people, when say the agent, they see it conversational. But long horizon is such an important part of like agents. Like, you can actually execute stuff. You can make them build a whole application layer, which we are doing actually on-prem. So yeah, so it's not mostly conversational. agent should be aware of its action. That is what we are that we want to tell everybody.
Got it. So I don't want to talk about the competitive landscape. It's not that interesting to me per se.
Yeah.
But if other retrieval systems are sort of ranking the potential outcomes based on similarity, right? Like if A happened, well, then A sub 1 can happen or A sub 2 could happen. What changes when you think about, well, another agent has already done this thing, so we know what the potential outcome or potential 2 or 3 outcomes can be. What changes in the activity of an agent when we have access to that? And I'll give you an example, right? We say this all the time. And I'll give you like a real life example. When my younger sister, when I was like 6 years old and my younger sister was 2 years old, she reached up onto the counter and grabbed a coffee cup and it spilled all over the front of her body.
Yeah. Yeah.
She never did that again.
Yes, exactly.
And no one had to tell her. Do you know what I mean? Like that's real learning.
Yes.
She knew, she didn't completely understand because she was 2, but she completely understood like the danger and the outcome. How do we get agents to have that type of experience, or how do we get them to know that before they actually do something bad? So it's kind of like a two-folded question, if you know what I mean. Right. So how would they know? Like, how do they know? What changes when they learn that kind of stuff? And that one agent has access to potential outcomes. Can other agents actually learn from that?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great question.
Thank you.
So I wanted to go a bit into context and like a bit on prompt engineering for this, because
Please.
that's, I think, is very will make things clearer.
Please.
So okay, so your context is hidden inside a lot of different information. Like it's not just similarity search will give you the right answer and then re-ranking will give you the right answer. It's not just a similarity search on query, but it should be made of what agent needs to execute that task well, right? It should be made live.
What does that mean?
And when it should be like based on the task that you gave, like, you know, like suppose physical robot, like wash my dishes, wash my car, make a sandwich for me. They all are different tasks, right? Like they are not, your context should not be the same. The robot context that is made to build a sandwich should be different from what, like, wash my car, right?
For sure.
So so this is what I said, like live context, the context based on task, right? And context should be coming from different sources, different information. So RAG is not enough, but retrieving, like re-ranking, is also not enough. Because your information is hidden in different context ways, and people spend a lot of time in building ontologies and, like, you know, spending a lot of money on knowledge graphs, etc. It comes with an ontology tax, which is like 1 to 3 million. But yeah, so basically we are trying to get the best information based on outcome, and you can simulate similar kind of task. That is how agent becomes actually outcome informed. Even though the task is a bit different, it's something like hindsight 2020. If you know the outcome, right? You can like interpolate like what the trajectory should be. That is exactly what agent does here.
So do you feel like RAG is a kludge? You know what a kludge is? You know what a kludge is, yeah? It's like a hack. It's like a hack to get something to work at the beginning of like some sort of new thing that's happening.
Exactly.
I feel like that's what RAG is. So, and for people that don't know, retrieval augmented generation is an AI technique that improves large language models, like by fetching relevant information from other sources, right? Just so people understand what RAG is. But the point is that it feels like somebody was sitting around when they were building the model and going, oh my God, but we don't know what that outcomes, we don't know what that thing's going to be, but somebody else knows, or some other system knows. Let's just build this thing that goes out and finds it and then brings it back in. And that feels like a hack to me. When do we get to a situation where it's more like what you and I do? Do you know what I mean? We're like, I put on ice skates, I look at the rink and I'm like, okay, I need to remember how I've ice skated in the past, and that my blade cannot be straight if I want to push off. Do you know what I mean? I just know that. But I don't have to go ask anybody because I've been skating before. How do we like get rid of RAG per se and just have that information in a place that's necessary in the same way that it is for you and for me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can get rid of retrieval. You can definitely get rid of RAG, but retrieval is important. I mean, production environments are very different from what works in demo. And
yeah, for sure.
A lot of people came up and talked to me like, hey, I can self-improve just by editing my agent.md file and ask it to self-improve on every result. I'm like, good luck with that.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Sorry, that's not going to work.
That's never going to work. Good luck to scale it. Like good luck while benchmarking it. So we saw it on benchmarks. We have published a lot of benchmark on Agent Bench, including all the popular one like Human Last Exam. Tau Bench is very difficult benchmarks. It's considered one of the toughest to hack in a conversational way.
Yep.
So yeah, so those little hacks of RAG, doing improving markdown files will never work in production environment.
Yeah.
They need a very different setup if you want to scale things.
Yeah, and it also doesn't work in real time the way you suggest, right?
Yeah, it doesn't work even in the real time. So personalized stuff like Hermes or Claw, like personal markdown files are very different from if you have to serve like 1 million customers, right?
That's true.
Totally.
So systemically and agentically in real time, I'm just thinking of a situation where, like, even for me personally, where I feel like there should be something that'll learn, but like, is that outcome a coincidence? Or is it actually something that's correlated, right? I talk about this a lot. Like, I don't understand sometimes coincidentality versus correlation. How do we know when we're teaching or when we're training agents that the outcome that they're learning about, that they're learning from, is not just like kind of, I don't know if that's going to happen again, right? That you don't understand the correlation, but it may just be coincidental.
Most of the time it happens that it learns that this kind of retrieval will help it in the long term, and this kind of steps will not help it. So it is not coincidental, I would say. It is correlated. Every task somehow correlates with other tasks, and like agents just keep learning about how to retrieve things.
And where does this fit into the implementation of agentic AI in big enterprises?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, as you might have heard,
today. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're doing great, Michael. Thank you. Okay, so you might have seen Nvidia's latest thing, like open weights model. They have like all the open weights model versus Anthropic talk. So, see, so enterprise should know that, like, if they accept a vendor or if they vendor lock in, their systems are not going to improve over time. Their harnesses or models are not going to improve their time, and they are going to lose the knowledge and the specialization they built over time, right? If you're not on open weights, you are basically giving up control and data to these big vendors,
right?
And you don't know how they are going to use it. Plus, open weights also give you a lot of control on deployment, on business cases, business requirement. You can run it on when you need it, not like all the time, or you pay all the time. Evaluate for your use case. So as you said, like, evaluation is important for agents to reach the right outcome, so they can evaluate according to themselves. So there's a lot of things that comes with open weights, and enterprises should know that self-improving their harness or making their own specialized model over time actually compounds to their business, right?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, actually. Go ahead, but I have another follow-up. Sorry, go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, so like so they actually compounds over time, your own so there will be a time where your models will start performing better than what you are like paying for the closed source models, like, because you build that on your knowledge base, on your experiences.
Right.
So this is what we provide as a harness.
Do you believe, just from based on your experience, that most enterprises or some percentage of enterprises actually have enough compute available to them to be able to download an open weight model, run enough inference to make it relevant for them, and also have the expertise to fine tune the model, right? Now that they know what the weights are, so that they can actually get the outcomes that they want to get based on the data input that they're giving, if that makes sense.
No, most of the people I talk to do not even have access to GPUs, do not have their own on-premise. Yeah, exactly. But I think those problems are solvable to some extent. Right now, most of the enterprises are dealing with how do I set up observability? How do I make organizational level? Because see, Clause and Hermes are very good for personalized agent, but for orgs, you need to define what information users will have access to, like employees, or what kind of tools they can call. So the scenarios are very different for it when it comes to enterprise level, right? And yeah, so coming to your question, how do they have enough compute? I think that is solvable when they will realize the compounding effect that self-improving specialized models they have, the kind of control they can have over their own like acquired knowledges and specializations. It's a good trade-off to own their own premise GPUs.
Awesome. Okay, so look, I'm going to thank you so much for coming and spending so much time with us today and for being such a good sport. I really appreciate it. You were awesome. Enjoy Amsterdam, and then hopefully you have a safe flight back to San Francisco when you go home. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Great. Bye.
Okay, Martin, let's bring in Ethan. Ethan, how are you? I am super duper man. Where are you based? Great, you're not that. I could probably walk there in a day. Yeah. It's nice to have you here. Founder of Smalt AI. We wanted to talk about how reliable AI work platforms can change productivity and the operating capacity of knowledge-based businesses. Tell us a little bit about Smalt AI, and then we'll dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, just a quick intro about Smalt AI is basically it works similar like how cloud cowork is, but we more focus on the output quality. So we train and fine tune our agents and models that focusing on delivers the output they're able to meet at least internal stakeholders level. So it not be client ready, but internal stakeholders ready level. So better than a simple draft that you get out from ChatGPT and stuff like that.
Interesting. So what changes inside of an institution, large or small, or a business large and small, when the AI itself, when the agents themselves actually become responsible for producing output and outcomes, as opposed to just answering questions, as you just suggested?
So the idea is that we understand that we always have to keep a human in the loop. So what we're trying to mitigate and to resolve the gap is where between just AI slot work compared to you have to keep on prompting and stuff like that. So we push the quality as much as possible, and then to a point where, all right, so this is the point that we delivers the work, but the human is the one that makes the call. That human is the one that bears the responsibility, so to say, right? So we can't throw everything just to AI, but you are the one that make this decision, and the person have to take the responsibility.
Do we run the risk? And again, this is just something that popped into my head as you were talking, but do we run the risk that agentic AI is going to make humans at scale like just less better at making decisions, or even lazy? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, the AI told me that this is the right thing to do. I'm just going to do it.
Definitely.
I hadn't actually thought about it until just now, right? But do you know what I mean? And let me give you an example and just some context. I ask AI to do 1,000 things for me every day.
Yeah.
And I believe like one of them. Do you know what I mean? And I'm constantly going like, I see the answer, but I don't believe that at all. Then I'll go and do more work to kind of validate that. But but I'm not sure I'm normal. Do you know what I mean? Like, do we run the risk of like a normal line employee just going like, I don't know, I got to get home, dinner's ready, my wife's calling me, the AI said to do this thing, I'm just going to do it. do we run that risk, or we don't think that's much of a risk?
No, that definitely a risk, Michael. I just read about research saying that AI makes people 2 times more confident, but 3 times more dumber in the sense of.
I think those numbers are completely wrong. I think it's 10 times more confident and 1,000 times more stupid. But go ahead.
Right. So yeah, that often happens, right? So for example, that I think that comes to a point for the user that make the decisions that how much do you want to rely on AI, right? So
Yeah.
having said that, we can't discount the effort or the output generated by the AI, right? So for example, last week I have a chance to speak to one of my clients.
Yep.
They are investment company, so they invest in a lot of small medium enterprises.
Go ahead.
And one of the example is that saying that they want to. There's a company comes to them saying that they want to pitch for a petroleum coke business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the company spent about 2 months to run the DD to present to the board. And the next day, when I pitch for my platform Smart AI to them, I run a similar analysis, and within 5 minutes, arrives at the same this conclusion and data compared to a 2 months DD. But it's up to the humans or the board to decide whether the information is reliable or whether it makes sense or not.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would make the case, and again, nothing against your system and its speed with the speed with which you make decisions. But I mean, just because it makes a decision really quickly doesn't mean it's necessarily right. And frankly, I get nervous when people agree with me right away. Like I want someone to like push back, because for 2 reasons. One, it means that actually that they're really thinking about what I said, either that or they're just mean people, which could probably like 50-50. But 2 is it makes me rethink like all of my presumptions around why I feel like I should make that decision, even if the data that's been given is exactly the same. Does that make sense? Like how do I validate whether it's just because it's the same doesn't mean it's right?
Yes, I totally get you. So I think that's what someone enjoy in the work, that we enjoy someone disagree us, right? Rather than everyone say yes to you, right? But then it's up to, I think it's also up to us how we prompt our AI, right? So for example, of course, if you just prompt straight up front, AI will agree maybe 90 or 99% of what you ask it to do, right? But then it's also up to, I think some of the prompts are suggested by even Anthropic themselves or even ChatGPT, I mean OpenAI, saying that ask them to, when you reach to a point, you ask the AI, is there anything that you miss? Is there anything that doesn't make sense? But maybe in this conversation, it goes that way, but take a pause, ask the AI to reevaluate, right? I think that's what a lot of people are doing right now. I myself sometimes, right, when developing and just go so smooth and everything just in line, but you just need another perspective. So another AI model works to give another perspective, saying that, hey, sometimes the database doesn't should build in that manner. It should be reconfigured in that sense. Yeah.
Right. How? And again, I'm just thinking about like some spreadsheets that I've built myself, and some of them have been really, really complex and complicated.
Right.
And I was partnering with some guys a few years ago in the real estate business that were making real estate investments in malls, let's say in the United States of America. Yeah.
Yep.
And every deal was different. We had a generic spreadsheet that we used, and then we spent literally a ton of time like optimizing and customizing the spreadsheet just based on the individual property and the individual potential returns. Like, how good can a system get that wants to be your coworker in building these sorts of financial models or research and all that other kind of stuff? And how do you create the right connectivity for the system to be able to see enough of the information that it needs and have enough context so that it knows that like this deal is different than that deal? Do you know what I mean? Because as a human, and sorry, just keep the thought, but as a human, I can walk over to your desk and go, okay, Ethan, look, I need a financial model for this real estate deal that we're doing. And it kind of looks like the one we did in California, but it's not. And here are the 3 reasons why. This out parcel is different. There's a covenant in the loan that like all these little things that could be completely different. How do we have access to that information without having to do the work ourselves? And then, do you know what I mean? Then giving it to an AI agent. Are we there yet?
Speaking about those qualitative factors, right? Not quantitative enough, those qualitative factors, right? So those are things where I think the recent that I think about a few months ago, there's a project by a Chinese student called Miro Fish. I'm not sure you heard about that.
No, Miro
So
Fish.
basically, is they simulate thousands of agents to form different qualitative perspective for a particular topic or a statement, right? And that comes to my mind. That project just comes to my mind. So, for example, for your case, is that a project based in California, and what is the difference compared in other states, right? So you can run a simulation saying that to do a social listening, so understand what are the qualitative factors there, what people are looking for. They are not quantitative, that can be reflected on a simple spreadsheet. And that as an input of data into a financial modeling. But that is kind of like pushing to kind of like an extreme spectrum, the end of spectrum, saying that only using AI. But my take is that we are still at a phase where we still need human in the loop to make some of the decision, like the qualitative one. So, for example, for your case, the financial modeling for real estate, those some of the things that they just shouldn't. I mean, they're just not able to capture in the AI system right now, regardless how good they are, because they are just didn't have the understanding of the experience in the industry.
Right. So when do we get to a point where the AI is actually like a coworker, as opposed to just kind of like an intern, or somewhere between intern and coworker? Do you know what I mean?
Right. I think that can be done in terms. I think the model right now is strong enough to do that, but someone need to build the context to fit into the model. That tell them saying that, hey, what's the context right now?
And how hard is that, building that context?
Wouldn't be the building the part is not that hard, but the hard part is to collecting the context. The context, I think, is the hard part. Yeah.
I do. I just think humans are fundamentally lazy, or most humans are fundamentally lazy. To get some of this done, you're gonna have to connect artificial intelligence to like literally hundreds of tools.
True.
Yeah.
True.
How do I know? What's the right way to say this? When I give it access to that number of tools, how can I understand whether it's reliably actually using all of them, or still maintains access to them, or is getting the right information from them, or that some other thing hasn't broken down, so that I can be confident? So I'm actually getting the real bump that I need in efficiency and productivity, as opposed to going like, oh, we don't use that tool anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are a whole bunch of variables there when all this stuff is happening. Whereas if it's just a human, I can literally like have somebody come over to me and go like, that's not going to work anymore, Michael, because X, Y, and Z.
Right. That happens to me when I build Smalt AI, in a sense that I thought that I have to connect to multiple data sources to able to form a very solid statements or results for my platform, right? But what I found is that eventually when you're building the process, I mean, in the building process, you found that a lot of databases or a lot of source that is not relevant or not applicable in the way that we thought it is. And of course, these have to go through rounds and rounds of evaluations. You have to run rounds of evals to make sure that it pushes, even without this database, even without this source, it's still able to reach, for example, 95% of the accuracy, and it does the job. If it thinks that if just simply taking out the data source of the databases, it's still able to do the work. It simply tells you that you don't need that database at all. In that way,
you don't need a database at all. Yeah. So, do you build your own LLMs, or do you rely on existing ones like Anthropic's models or OpenAI's models or whatever?
Yeah, I don't think it makes sense to build another one right now. I mean, in the market, given that we have a lot of open source models. Yeah.
Yep. So that's the other question: is do you use the open weight models? And if you do, are you downloading? You can't have the level of compute necessary to download them and fine tune them for yourself, can you?
I couldn't. I use Base 10, not sure about them, but I use Base 10 to do the model hosting, and they are relatively more stable and faster in that way. So Base 10 is my go-to.
So what do you think about models like Moonshot's Kimi K3 or or DeepSeek?
Magnificent, to be fair. It's very good. I mean, I'm surprised with the results. And I think we today just open source the Quen 888, and it's just brilliant, to be fair. And That's what Smalt is built and based on. In terms of we only focus on one particular LLM, we build on multiple LLM fusion of it. So to pick up whichever better and perform better for this current version compared to others, and we are using that. And different LLMs focus on different tasks, I would say.
Yeah. But are you constantly evaluating like which large language model to use?
Yeah,
for
definitely.
Specific, because they're always leapfrogging each other, right? Like one day, I'm just going to make stuff up, right? But like one day, Fable 5 is really good at this, but then Kimi K3 comes out and goes, we're way better at programming than you are just based on the benchmark. Do you know what I mean? Are you constantly switching, or at some point you have to make a decision like, okay, we're just going to go with this thing. We're going to stick with it. It's good enough. And they're switching costs, not really, but like just the back and forth of like, do you know what I mean? All the testing you have to do just to make sure that everything still works can get overwhelming at some point, no?
Definitely. So, and in terms for me, allow myself to do that, I have to understand each model's their strength and weakness.
Right.
And then cost definitely one of the things. If running business, I think cost definitely one of the things. I think right now, GPT 5.6 Luna has the edge, have the better. I mean, they are the best right now in the market in terms of efficiency, in terms of the cost and stuff like that.
Got it.
But eventually tomorrow, if tomorrow saying that, hey, DeepSeek, V5, for example, is a fraction of a cost for Luna, and we still have to evaluate beside the cost and other factors as well. So we have to give and take, but yeah, I have to constantly weighing which model to use and stuff like that. Because if we stick with particular model, it just telling it will be a risk as well, in the sense that you don't really improve in a way that, for example, you still start with Sonnet 4.6, for example, but now it's already for Sonnet 5, but you're simply just comfortable with that.
Yeah, I just, all this back and forth and stuff and model switching to me seems just like a head fake. I think at some point they're all going to get so close together that the models are going to be almost fungible, for lack of a better word. What do you think about, and I just had a whole conversation with somebody on this, maybe you heard some of it, but what do you think about agentic learning? Like one of the things that Sonam was saying in our previous segment was that like agents don't understand, what did I write down? They're not outcome informed, right? They can do activities, but they don't know what the result of that activity is going to be.
Right.
How do you disintermediate that? Because it creates risk, right? Like I know if I jump off of a bridge, I'm probably going to die. I know what the outcome is before I do it. I can make a decision as to whether, and I'm not suicidal. That's not the point. I'm not trying to go there, but I'm just saying like, I know what the potential outcomes are, but agents don't know, again, according to Sonam. So how do we get them to a point where they do know? And does that even matter when we're talking about the stuff that you're working on?
Definitely, you raise a very good point, Michael. That is for Smalt, there is a loop that's happening behind the scene, in a sense where when deliverables happens to deliver to our clients or our user, triggers a loop. And a loop is, so for example, if the platform is running on, for example, Claude or Font or Sonnet, right? Then the loop will be by other models. And that is a monitoring feedback loop, in a sense where it goes through everything delivers to our clients. And it feeds back to me personally and says that, hey, Ethan, today deliverables for this PowerPoint, there are some gaps that we found, and perhaps you can look into that. So I think that kind of the recursive idea have to be in place. Of course, we can automate the whole thing, but I would rather keep myself in the loop to understand what is happening.
Yeah, I mean, this whole idea of humans in the loop is actually really important. How do you figure out accountability and responsibility? Like if an agent does a multi-step process, let's say, where it's not just doing one thing, but has kind of long context. It does this thing that feeds into that thing that goes into this thing and then gives some output. But at the end of the day, it's wrong. I mean, who's responsible for that? And how do we maintain like that level of accountability? I think everybody says like, well, you have to have a human in the loop. But again, just getting back to this idea that humans are fundamentally lazy. Do you know what I mean? Like sorry, I'm going to say this in reverse, actually. I presume when I run my washing machine for my clothes that the clothes are clean.
True.
Do you know what I mean? I've just believed that it's right. But sometimes, and this hasn't happened in a while, but sometimes I forget to put the soap in.
True.
Do you know what I mean? So even having a human in the loop doesn't guarantee that it's going to be right, and I'm responsible. Like I can't get mad at the washing machine for be like, oh, come on, how come you didn't tell me? Do you know what I mean? Although some washers, I've been in some condos where the washing machine has liquid in it. You just turn it on and it puts in the. Do you know what I mean? So like, how do we keep this accountability?
So just to use back your illustration as a washing machines, right? So for example, when you're doing your laundry, everything is there, the soup is there, the water is there, everything is there, and it runs perfectly, right? And it just comes out, the result is not what you're expecting. So who you blame? You're definitely not blaming yourself because you have done everything else. You put everything there.
Okay, I did it. Yeah, it's not my fault.
Yeah, it's not your fault. It's the machines that didn't do the job, right? Then who you call? So if you get it from, for example, you get it from Samsung, right? So you give a call to the customer, hey, is it under warranty? He's not doing his job and stuff like that. So I think that accountability is still there in a sense where the user do whatever it needs to do, and it does within the capability. And for example, it's just prompting the AI, but the AI is simply just not performing. And who is taking the accountability? For my understanding, would be the developers will be the one that taking the accountability. So for example, I think recently we have read about news that AI came out from the sandbox environment and doing some of the damage here and there.
Yep, logged in the Hugging Face and a bunch of other places, but yeah.
Yeah, and definitely, like, I think OpenAI had to step in, like, to say, hey, we're trying to figure it out.
I blame Sam Altman directly.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, right.
I'm kidding, but yeah. But so one more thing, and then I'll let you go, because I can't finish without asking this. What does an enterprise or a company need to see for them to believe that an AI platform is actually creating real productivity gains rather than moving work into like a different place? And the reason why I ask this is because, and Martin and I were talking about this earlier, I can't remember the exact statistics, but something like, I don't know, some percentage of companies are like laying people off, are deploying AI, and like 80% of them don't have any ROI to speak of. Now, I know it's early days, so I get that part, but eliminating that as a thing, what do they have to see so they're like, whoa, this thing's actually working and it gives us a real good ROI?
I quote an exact word from my clients. It says that one button is solve everything. So what they want to see is that
it's like a fantasy world, but go ahead.
Yeah, an output that they can see is that they use much more significant time to complete the output, and the quality same par as the humans. That is something they would love to see.
I feel like we're so far away from that. Okay. Ethan, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I love the insights, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Okay. Bye for now. Bye. Martin, let's bring in Ben. Ben, how are you? It's our pleasure. Could you hear the previous conversation we were having? Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's just that you were. It seemed like you were reacting to stuff that we were saying, and I'm like, was I that stupid? Anyway,
well, it's probably just me doing my hair or something like that.
Your hair looks great. At least you still have your hair. Is the way I look at it as a man.
Yeah, but I just don't have your voice. I've been listening to your podcast, and you just got that perfect podcast voice. So.
Can I hang up now, please? Now that I'm embarrassed. Don't do that to me. Yeah. It's great to have you here. We wanted to talk. This is a really interesting topic. You're in Australia, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in Melbourne right now. It's a bit dark, but
yeah, it's late. God, it's not that late. It's 7 o'clock, but it's the season. Anyway, it's good to have you here. We want to talk about how embedded superannuation infrastructure can reduce compliance risk and just improve the businesses of onboarding stuff, particularly in Australia, which is where this stuff really matters. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about SuperAPI before we jump into this.
Yeah, great. Look, I mean, what I think would be really good for listeners too is giving a little bit of a history lesson about superannuation.
Agreed.
The industry is quite unique. But in a nutshell, essentially what we do is we help the superannuation funds. So in Australia, we have very large retirement funds called superannuation funds, which actually receive now 12% of every working Australian's income.
Wow, that's great. That's good, yeah.
Fund. So you can imagine it's pretty important that everyone's superannuation, their 12% of their pay goes to the right place at the right time.
Wow.
And there are over 100 superannuation funds in the market. So sure, we're a small economy in a global sense. It's 25, 26 million people here, 16 million or so workers. Those 16 million people are generating 3.8 billion Australian dollars per week in superannuation contributions.
Oh my God, that's a ton of money. Can I ask you this? Are the superannuation funds allowed to invest outside of Australia?
Absolutely.
That's true, right?
Absolutely.
So if they're generating, and again, I just want to make sure I heard you, $3.8 billion a week. So my math is not that good, but that's $190 billion a year. Approximately. I just did 50 weeks because I'm not
and
that
it's
smart,
invested
right?
and it's compounding, and to maybe a bit of a picture as to how much investment is required to go overseas. Essentially, there's nowhere else to spend it in Australia. So our economy is too small to be able to invest all of that in the public equities markets, even in money markets. Very large proportion of it is invested Europe, Asia. We have large venture capital funds here, which are actually invested in by the superannuation fund as limited partners. So it's a pretty important part of the Australian ecosystem for technology, for all kinds of business. And that's why, when we talk about the compliance, so making sure that the contributions, people's pay goes to the right place at the right time. It's a big issue for us as an economy, but also it's a bit of a political one too.
See, I want to get to that too, because I do think it's super interesting. Just the sheer amount of money. So you've actually corroborated an idea that I've had for over a decade now. And that is that as the rest of the world, and I don't give investment advice. That's not what the show's about. The fact that I worked at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs does not mean that I'm either qualified nor licensed to give investment advice, particularly today. But the fact that $3.8 billion is being generated in Australia that's going into the superannuation funds, it's almost $200 billion a year. And that's too much money to invest domestically means that, again, some portion of it has to go overseas. I presume it's going into the biggest, most liquid places where possible. And it argues for investing in biggest index funds or ETFs, which means that fundamentally over the next however many years, you can confidently tell people that even with market gyrations, that like big indices are going to go higher, at least in my mind. You don't need to comment on that. It's just like you've corroborated this because that's in Australia alone, where there are only 25 or 26, let's call it 30 million people rounded up. It's just a ton of money. Can we talk about, because you mentioned the compliance side of this, what are the key challenges on the compliance side? I presume that all this stuff runs through like an HR department per se. Yeah.
Well, every employer in Australia is essentially a tax collector. There's a system here called GST. So 10% of everything that's bought and sold, every business has to collect it, pay that to the government. Got income taxes and the rest. And then another proportion of that, 12%, has to be paid by an employer to the employee superannuation fund.
Right.
And so what's actually changed over the last few years, and it's been a number of years of changes, are things like looking at making sure that every employee in Australia is supported to make sure that they're not putting their money in the wrong place. Simplest way of putting it without any technical finance jargon. So there's been increasing amount of regulation to make sure that an employee doesn't accidentally open up new superannuation accounts when they start a new job. They should theoretically keep their existing superannuation funds. So
it moves with you when you move companies. That's easy to do. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't been until the last few years. So these are some things that have just come into force, and there's a process there that was brought in by the government called stapling. And so we actually saw an opportunity when these new APIs came out to actually be the first to connect to those. But then we also realized that a lot of the superannuation funds were receiving notification. So there's the money moving, paying the money, but just like a pay slip. So an employee getting their pay slip, I'm getting paid my payroll. The super funds have to receive some kind of message akin to a pay slip that tells them that to expect the money. So if Ben's been paid 12% of his pay, the super fund needs to know to expect 12% of my pay.
That alone feels like a ton of money, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. So
sorry, go ahead.
Still going. So the the issue that arose there over 30 or 40 years, this system's been in place for 30 years, was that there was no one system. So no one set of APIs, no one set of connectivity for these messages to go. So if you start to draw some similarities here to open banking, you start to draw some similarities here to e-invoicing, well, surely there just needs to be a suite of APIs and messages to be able to tell superannuation funds to expect money and to help payroll managers send that money to the right place. So that's a really simple way of explaining why we exist without telling you exactly what we do.
So the APIs are being run. Was this done up from a regulatory standpoint that the super funds themselves had to build API connectivity to the employers so that they could make the sending of money more straightforward and also easier to understand technologically, and that these messages can properly get sent, whether it's Super Fund 1 or Super Fund 100. Does that make sense?
It's exactly right. And the way that the government did that is ask the ATO to build up a set of APIs to support employers. Support employers, make sure that money goes the right way. Now, the super funds then had to subscribe and push that data out. But then what we found was that implementation was very expensive for payroll companies.
And payroll companies, go ahead.
Yeah. So when we stepped back and looked at the big picture, we realized that a lot of the software industry hadn't implemented these steps simply because these compliance steps, they weren't, they were efficiency gains for employers if you did it with technology, but it wasn't big enough to maybe be able to charge for it. Or not enough to be able to cover for it. And so what we did is we decided, well, this is an opportunity to build a piece of infrastructure that everyone can use. And so we built that as an onboarding system. So we learned that when you have a new employee join your business, the best way to make sure that they're paid right first time and that their superannuation goes the right way is you validate everything about that individual. And so that's essentially what we do. When someone joins any employer in Australia, we can provide the onboarding service end to end for that employer. And the employee has all of their details validated on the spot, their bank account details, their tax file number declarations connected to the ATO, and then this API call to make sure that their superannuation will get paid right first time.
It just makes it so much easier for the people to do this, because you're right. Like, if I'm working at company A and I move to company B, one of the first things that my theoretical wife is going to ask me is like, honey, what are we going to do about our superannuation stuff? Is that thing going to get transferred over? And I'd like to be able to say with confidence, of course, but actually I might not know unless this new company has access to the system that automatically is going to be able to take it and API connect directly to the same place where I was already investing my money. Yeah, is that fair?
Done a far better job than I have of explaining it, I think. And this is
I don't charge for that, by the way. I should, but I don't.
You can come to our next capital raise.
Let's see if I can make it. Let's see if I can make it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So look, I mean, that's essentially it. And the picture you've just drawn there, which is, well, maybe if I go to my next job, shouldn't this come with me?
Yeah.
That means you need scale. And so we built a SuperAPI to allow us to scale. So we're a bunch of people who are payroll, accounting, HR, banking technology. So a couple of us used to work at Xero. We sort of went on the whole wild ride of building a really fun global company.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, no, look, that was fun. It was certainly not down to me. There were thousands of people who made that happen. But the exciting thing for us was the ability to solve a really, really painful problem for employers, but know that employees were going to get benefit from that wherever they went. And so now we're at the point where we have 20,000 employers in Australia using our software. And that now means we've got 30,000, well, actually 34,000 this month. We just hit 34,000 new employees per month start their job with SuperAPI. And that's starting to become a significant proportion of new jobs in Australia are starting with SuperAPI.
So I always think 30,000, it's a big number. And how long has SuperAPI been around?
4 years.
Okay, so not that long. As you continue to build, and I presume there's some artificial intelligence involved here as well. There's some AI that's like doing some analysis and trying to figure out like where people should go and how the onboarding should take place and integrating into some other systems inside of, again, all of these companies whose HR is doing the onboarding for these employees. Is that a fair presumption?
Well, we've looked at the entire horizon for us, and Horizon 1 is absolutely become a piece of the infrastructure for superannuation.
It would have to be.
That is a highly regulated spot. Yep. And so we actually are part of the GNGB network. We use a gateway service which is regulated. So we send data through that, and we don't apply any AI logic over the top of any of it. We're ISO certified, ISO 27001, because we're an ATO digital service provider. We're licensed to act on behalf of an employer at the ATO. So we're actually in a very unique spot of trust. Now, AI for us is about 10xing developers who we believe are 10x developers. So we've hired senior engineers, given them really good tooling, and essentially they use that to amplify how quickly they build. And they've got the senior engineering chops to be able to understand, how do I make sure that this is the correct thing that we've built?
So before we get back to the Super API stuff specifically, like how has that implementation, right, of sort of agentic coding changed the way you build things at Super API? And how has it changed the sort of engineering culture as well? I'm curious.
I feel like it's probably drawn a much stronger line under Sam Richardson. He's our CTO. Sam Richardson had this idea that if we hire a team of Navy SEALs, which everyone wants to hire the best, right? But if we hire them and just give them the best tools and support them and make the right decisions, then we will get a great outcome. It's actually amplified that. It hasn't been about replacing them. It's actually made them much more important, because I think everyone in the market understands now that, yes, the volume of code you can produce is huge, but you need very experienced people to be able to understand what it has created for you and be able to bring that into your PRs every day.
I love a CTO who's like really, what's the right word, thoughtful about the deployment and employing of artificial intelligence, particularly when it comes to agentic coding. I've spoken to so many people that are like, we're just going to fire everybody. The code's going to write everything. And I'm like, you can't, like, you're just going to have to hire 70% of the people back. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like a dumb thing to say. So the idea that you're working with a guy, and I'm not blowing smoke, but like the idea that you're working with a guy who's like, you know what, this is great, but you're right. We can hire a bunch of Navy SEALs, and well, actually we can have the best tools in the world, but if nobody knows how to swim, do you know what I mean? Then like having these tools for the Navy SEALs is useless, kind of thing, because they're just going to drown. And I think it's the same thing for coding. It's like if you don't have a guy or a gal who really understands like what the outcome code should look like and what it should do and what the infrastructure around it is like, you can have as much agentic coding as you like, and I still think you're going to have a nightmare of stuff, because you're right, it can produce it in quantity, but the quality, I think, is still iffy. Anyway, it's a different subject for a different time. As you keep building, I always say this to people that are building stuff in the money space, but as you keep building, and if the expertise is onboarding people and understanding the regulatory, and again, stop me if I'm wrong, understanding the regulatory environment, but then helping companies make sure that their employees' superannuation stuff goes to the right place. It's a ton of money. Once you build that trust with these companies, are there other things you can do? And remember, the platform says super, so it has kind of superannuation in it, but there's API in it as well. And since the API connectivity, along with the MCP stuff that you're doing, not that you're doing, but that's out there if you want to have agentic connectivity to places, once you build that trust in the money world, are there other things that you're considering doing? Are there services you're considering doing? You look uncomfortable, like, oh, don't ask me that, please. But you know what I mean? Because now that you're trusted and it works and there's a ton of money going through the system potentially, are there other things you can do now that you have that trust?
Yeah, look, I think it's really interesting that you're picking up on that, and that's why we've been so careful. Just as the lights go off around me, that's why I was uncomfortable. We've just moved into a new building because we didn't have room.
I hope they didn't turn off like the heat or the air conditioning.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so we look at that as, again, this Horizons perspective on our business, and we're now at the point where we're getting asked that by our superannuation fund partners. We've got seven of the top 10 super funds in the market here, and they account for 75 or so percent of the money we were talking about before. They're holding, they're approaching $4 trillion in funds under management, and they're asking us, well, if you're sending the same messages that we need to create members, and the same messages that we need and trust to identify members and ensure that they stay with their super fund, don't accidentally start a new one, the same messages that we're using to help them understand, do you need to opt in for the insurance option that comes with your super? Well, why aren't you moving the money as well? Because you're doing all the same things that it would take for us to be able to move the money.
Right.
And so that's led organically to exactly those conversations. And the way that this is playing out is one of the most important things a super fund can do for a member is help them look for any superannuation memberships that they forgot about when they started their job 10 years ago.
Exactly.
So that's something we're building with the partner super fund, where we're now becoming what they term in Australia as sub-administrator, which means that we fall under another regulatory regime, CPS 230, and we will be providing what's called a contribution rollover service, which allows us again to do even more things with the Australian Tax Office, the ATO, to help employees consolidate their retirement investment into one place.
So when you do your stand-up meetings every Monday morning, and I'm not suggesting that you definitely do this, but you probably do. When you do these and I'll let you go after this, when you do those stand-up meetings and you look at the expertise, like you said, somebody from Xero, somebody from accounting, somebody from banking, and you look around, you go, okay, we have all this expertise here. Should we be a neobank at some level since, again, all this money is moving through? Do you think about that as well? And then I'll let you go, because I have too many other questions and I feel like you don't want to answer the rest of these.
We actually feel like there is far more road ahead of us, just in terms of supporting those that are expert in managing Australians' money.
Yeah, fair enough.
There is a simple way of putting it. We can easily draw up a 30-year roadmap for you if you locked us in a room, on what we do today without doing any of those things.
Fair enough. Okay, but I still feel like there's a lot of stuff you guys are going to be working on that you maybe can't talk about today, which is a good thing. I love a guy who's in the office when the lights go out. Ben, I really appreciate your time today. Yeah, and good luck as you continue to build. It sounds like you've got a great team there and obviously a really great business. So thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Anytime.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
See ya.
Bye for now. Okay, Martin, let's bring in Bhagwat. How are you? Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Where are you based?
I'm based in Singapore.
Okay. How's your connectivity going today?
I think it's pretty good so far.
Okay, you seem to be lagging a little bit, but let's see how far we can get. So thank you so much for coming on and doing this today. We wanted to talk about how practical AI adoption and locally informed market expansion can get us informed growth and operating performance of businesses when they enter new markets, particularly from west to east or east to west. Before we get to that in detail, tell us a little bit about CXGLOBE.
Sorry, I missed that. There was some lag there.
That is exactly what I was concerned about.
Right.
Just tell us a little bit about CXGLOBE before we jump into the details.
Sure. Hi, my name is Bhagwat Pant, and I'm running a kind of independent sales and go-to-market consulting called CXGLOBE, where I'm helping startups to expand into APAC market. primarily, and also helping them to see if they want to go global, if I can support them in a right way to help and develop their go-to-market strategies.
So what are some of the key things you consider when you look at a startup that says, I want to expand? And where are most of these startups based? Are they based in the West and you're trying to move them into Asia? Is it vice versa? Or is it, you're not concerned about which way the movement is going?
Yeah, my ideal scenario, would have been or is that, they're working with startups in the West and who are looking to expand into the APAC. But currently I'm working with a couple of APAC startups who are looking to expand within the region, and then they have the global ambitions as well.
Got it. What are some of the key things you look for when a startup from the West comes to you and says, I think I want to expand to, let's say, Southeast Asia or India or somewhere in Asia, and you're like, I don't know if I can help. Do you know what I mean? Like, what are the components that they have to have for you to say, like, yeah, bring it on. I know how to do the market entry for this type of business.
Yeah. First of all, most of them, they don't come with the statement, say, I want to come to Southeast Asia or India. They come with, say, we want to expand into the APAC, right? Treating it as one of the big markets.
Which is their first mistake. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So anybody who's based in Asia or APAC would tell you exactly that. But that's one of the first thing. But whenever I'm looking at any company who's looking to expand into Asia, say, what is exactly they are bringing in, right? What has been their beachhead, where they are in their journey? Are they CD A, B, C, or the further along the way? They have had revenue. They have any proof points, reputable ones, and what is their commitment when they are looking to expand? Is it because they've been told to expand into the APAC because they want to show, a presence, a dot in the map, which the investors might be asking for, or they have a genuine interest to really expand into APAC and build a solid business over here?
What is can you characterize the types of companies that you're dealing with for the most part? In other words, are you seeing a lot of fintechs? Are you seeing a lot of health tech companies? Are you seeing a lot of AI companies? Like when you can qualify them or characterize them, do they fall into categories, or is it just sort of a whole host of different types of companies that feel like I need to be in Asia Pacific?
Well, I've been more focused into the tech companies, that they are more SaaS or AI related companies. So either they have, some sort of tech product, or they are looking to build one, and they're looking to expand into APAC. But I have had interesting conversation in the past where there was a company who was making drones and wanted to monetize that and expand globally from APAC, where they were already doing a lot of work, and then they are, having a really good use cases, but their platform wasn't really ready to go global at that point of time.
Right.
So there has been some interesting cases.
So how do you help a company in this region that wants to go global? Like, what are the things that they need when you're telling them, like, you guys are definitely not ready or 100%? Do you know what I mean? Like, what are the things that they have to do to get ready to go global that's maybe not necessary just to run an effective and an efficient business in APAC?
Well, the first thing, I think exactly those things that I mentioned previously, looking at those companies who are looking to come to Asia from the West. So exactly those things, and their region where they want to go and why they want to go, right? A lot of companies from Asia want to go to the US because it's one of the single largest markets. So it is understandable, but it may not be the right one for them, right? To understand what is driving that motivation. But I have been working with the companies who wanted to expand into the Asia first, where they wanted to build their solid base. So which is a good thing to happen, because I always encourage companies to have a solid base in their home or domestic markets before they want to expand outside.
What are some of the things that we do to educate company founders or people that are trying to expand into APAC that it's not like one big monolithic market? And you can also like ask this in reverse, right? If I want to expand into the United States of America, I know that Kentucky is different from New York. Like I get that, but it's not that different, right? But Vietnam is definitely not the Philippines. Yeah. and the Philippines is definitely not Singapore, which are two like completely, they're like upside down markets. Once you start convincing people of that and start showing them that, because my presumption is that most people that are trying to expand from the West into APAC don't know that at all, that they do think it's one big monolithic market. What does it do to their thought processes or their understanding about expanding once they realize, wait a second, this is way different than I thought it was?
Yeah, often people assume that it's one big monolithic market.
For
but
sure.
I have seen, the people now are more educated than they were like a few years back.
Okay.
The AI is also helping us to unearth some insights, and people are doing some due diligence in that. Sometimes they have clear information where they want to go first, and they have their region, so which is very good. But often they feel like, for a particular market, the investment they want to put it in would suffice to cover not only one market, but it can help them to expand and, the land more customers in the region. From outside, it looks easier because it says APAC. There's
Right.
so much proximity in Southeast Asia. For example, you mentioned about Philippines and Vietnam and Singapore and Malaysia. But there are very different buyer personas. There are different, the cultural expectations. There is a
Completely.
different way of doing business in the region. So if you want to come to Singapore first and expect, and you have had a couple of wins in Singapore, you found it's very efficient, higher governance, and you expect same thing to happen in Malaysia or Philippines or in Indonesia, then they are in for the root shock. So that's where we need to help them and guide them along and make sure that they understand the complexities. And
Right.
we also want to make sure that the way to do in business in Asia is not just you land and you hire a great team and expand in the region and expect to get immediate business if you have a great product. Might be if you are one of those companies who is already running a great PLG motion where your product is so good or the different, then you have buyers from everywhere. Now those are the exceptions, but most are not the exceptions. And in those scenarios, you need to really understand what is the main criteria that you are looking to achieve. What are the key goals you have in mind, and what you want to do with that? How much investment you are willing to make to achieve those goals. So there is a big gap, and then they understand. They go back, and either they come back with the right numbers, or they curtail the the decision to go forward, or they decide that okay, now we understand better, and they go back to their advisors and go more due diligence and come back, say okay, now we understand and we want to do this thing first.
Got it. This year has been an incredible year for, if nothing else, just the introduction of agentic AI. And we saw back in February and March a whole bunch of token maxing. We don't see that as much anymore. What has been the impact of that particular strand of artificial intelligence on the things that you do, but also on the types of companies that you're seeing trying to expand into APAC?
I think, in my personal view, is the token maxing is still limited to few companies who are heavily development oriented, engineering oriented, who are trying to create new products where they are going into the the token maxing. A large number of organizations I have seen are still struggling with AI adoption at the enterprise level, especially when you're looking at the the typical industries in the banking or healthcare or retail or telcos, where they are experimenting with things, but they have not really decided where they want to go, though there are some good exceptions and good examples in the region. So that's where those organizations understand they have a clear policy, they have the governance frameworks, and they are working with that. Rest are still struggling with that.
So what is causing the struggles? Like what are the roadblocks for them? Is it just sort of institutional inertia, or is it just like we don't know we know we should be doing this, but we don't know how to do it? Is it a budgetary, like where is this struggle coming from, and how do they solve that struggle?
I think all of them. Michael. So,
Okay.
you know,
Fair enough.
and you can imagine, like, that we are talking about APAC. So the digital maturity is different as you go across the countries, from country to country. And I've been operating in this region for over 25 years, right? So we have seen that over the years, how the .com era came, then the Web 2.0, then the data, and now we are into the AI era. So there is, the organizations at a different level of maturity and how they want to go and adopt it. So I don't think that there is any question about people don't know what AI is. They know what AI is, and they all want to adopt AI. However, the many of them are not ready, fundamentally because their infrastructure, their data platforms is not ready. Number two, the people, working in those organizations are not ready. But the biggest problem I see when I talk to the people in the industry and in my network, they often tell me the biggest problem is that organizations are still confused because because their leaders haven't really had a clear vision or policy that how they're going to implement AI. So that creates the biggest confusion. They say, okay, here is this budget, go and do something, and I want to see an ROI, right? And they go and try to find some pilots working in isolation with great success and fanfare, but when they come back and try to implement it across the organization, it doesn't work because there are inherent challenges within the organization. And it is not linked to their business strategy. It's not linked to their vision and what the company wants to achieve with AI.
Yeah, it's hard to get people to do stuff when senior leadership doesn't know why they want to do it. But I think the follow-on to that is I was reading something, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that said there was an intelligence report that revealed that 44% of Gen Z workers admit to actively sabotaging AI initiatives. Are you hearing anything on this as well?
I haven't really seen that. But that looks very interesting. What I've been hearing most that the Gen Zs have been adopting AI for everything, for their search, for food, for living, for travel.
But from a work perspective, they're afraid of
everything.
losing their jobs, apparently, at least according to this report.
Right. I would love to see that report. But I have heard the other ways that mostly the older people are afraid of losing their jobs because they are more averse to change, where we assume, at least I thought so, that the Gen Z are more adaptable to the newer tools, AI and things like that.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought as well, except that I don't know. Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. I'm not against AI at all. I adopted it 15 years ago when I was working at Goldman Sachs and at other places. So it just helped me do my job way better. It made me more efficient and helped me make way more money. So I think that experience changed the way I thought about tech. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Bhagwat. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being so generous with your time.
Thank you so much, Michael.
It was my complete pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Okay, that is it today for ATP Insights. Thank you to everybody who joined the live stream. As always, give us a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and follow us on all of our socials, on X, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. We're active in all of those places. We'd love to get feedback from people. We love to answer questions. We love to feed your questions into our guests as well. My name is Michael Waitze. I'm going to say goodbye.